At a baseball field, there is a pitcher named Jiziop, and his average four-seam fastball speed is around 124 kilometers, which is not very fast. As he throws the ball toward the batter, everyone watching wonders if the batter will hit a home run because of the slow pitch. At the same time, Jiziop thinks about his own skills and feels that besides his slow fastball, his breaking ball is also weak and the only thing he can use is his control. A memory comes to his mind, where someone tells him that he does not seem to have much talent for baseball and suggests that he should focus on studying or learn another skill while he still can. Even so, Jiziop believes that even if the advice sounds right, he still chooses to keep playing baseball because there is a reason he cannot give up. Everything starts when he is 15 years old, standing alone on a baseball field and thinking carefully about what kind of pitch he should throw next. All of a sudden, he begins to hear the batter's thoughts, clearly realizing that the batter is hoping for a fastball. He soon understands that he can read and predict the thoughts of every player on the field, and with such amazing ability, he feels that quitting baseball is impossible for him. Because of this, Jiziop does not give up and continues going anywhere he can just to keep playing baseball. However, baseball is not only about hard work and passion, and because of its limits no team from any country wants to keep him as a player. In the end, when Jiziop turns 32 years old, his long baseball career finally comes to an end at that age. Back in present, Jiziop's father asks him what he is going to do for a living, but Jiziop thinks that he has a brilliant plan to use his mind-reading ability. He then tells his father that he wants him to lend him 50 million won, so he is going to play poker. He explains that in America, there's a poker league just like their country's Go League and the prize money is enormous. Hearing that, Jiziop's dad asks his eldest son Ji-chang to get a broom from outside, so that he can whoop Jiziop for even thinking about it. After that, Jiziop gets kicked out and his brother asks him how he feels about it. Ji-chang asks Jiziop if he also thinks that it's time when he is like everyone else, working a job and bringing home a paycheck. Jiziop says that he is not an idiot for thinking that he don't want it, but he wonder if there's a job out there for him. Ji-chang then gives him a social baseball academy ticket business card and says that he asked a friend to arrange a spot for him, so he should go tomorrow. The next day, Jiziop visits the academy where the CEO Suman takes his interview. Suman tells him that since he is Ji-chang's brother, he would love to hire him outright, but he still need to go through an interview, so he asks some question. Suman says that there are so many talented and wealthy players out there, and because of that, too many new academies are popping up targeting them. So, he asks what management strategy should their superstar baseball take. Hearing that, Jiziop starts panicking and wondering why he is even asking him that. He then tells him that he would lower the lesson fees since most of the people coming to the academy are office workers. Hearing that, Suman gets really excited and tells Jiziop that they should work together. Later that night, Jiziop comes back home and tells Ji-chang that he gets the job and now has to work from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. He explains that even though the schedule is tough, he still has to do it. Ji-chang listens and thinks that Jiziop is suddenly acting all noble and admirable. However, Ji-chang soon becomes shocked when he notices that Jiziop is using Nakamura Hideo's Tabota slugger glove. He gets angry and starts hitting Jiziop, saying that even if he is not a baseball player anymore, he still knows that the equipment costs more than 1 million won. He also thinks it is strange that Jiziop is just starting over but already owns such an expensive glove. Jiziop then calmly asks if it really makes sense that when he was still active, he only used a glove worth 300,000 won, but now he is using one that costs over 1 million won. Ji-chang does not understand the reason at all, so he asks Jiziop why he has it. Jiziop explains that he plans to sell the glove to academy members for around 1.5 million won. When he hears this, Ji-chang panics and says that the same glove can be bought online for about 900,000 won with a discount, so he cannot understand how Jiziop plans to sell it for 1.5 million won. The next day, Jiziop goes back to the office, where Coach Han asks him about trying to sell the glove for 1.5 million won and wants to know the reason behind it. Jiziop starts wondering what Coach Han is really thinking, so he quietly reads his thoughts and realizes that the academy owner could end up paying the full cost of the glove himself if things are not handled carefully. Coach Han then explains that President Choi runs a large studio apartment rental business and is known as a very wealthy person within the academy. He also tells Jiziop that Choi has never bought any equipment sold there because none of the academy's gear meets his personal standards. Instead, Choi only buys equipment that has been used by major league players, including bats and balls, so the academy's items never catch his interest at all. Later that same day, Jiziop gathers everyone out on the field and tells them that they will be doing infield defense training together. While preparing, Jiziop notices that Choi does not look well and seems uncomfortable, so he decides to walk over and check on him. Jiziop says that he is missing quite a lot of balls and it could be because of his gloves, so he gives him the expensive ones to try. Hearing that, Choi gets furious and asks him if he didn't hear from Coach Han that he isn't the type to wear an equipment that's not top tier. Jaiziop replies that he never said he was going to sell that glove in the first place and that Tabota glove is higher tier than his glove. Jaiziop then tells him to try that glove and check it himself, and once he does, Choi easily catches the ball that Jaiziop just shot. The next day, everyone strongly wants Jaiziop to let them hold the glove at least once because they are very curious about it. Choi then asks Jaiziop why he is acting so secretive with the glove and questions how it can catch balls better than a glove used by a major league player. After watching everyone for a few days, Jaiziop comes to the conclusion that the desire to win is the same for both professional players and amateur baseball players. He thinks that because these people are busy with their regular jobs, they do not have much time to practice, so they try to make up for it by getting the best equipment they can. Jaiziop then explains that if they want to know why they are catching balls more easily just by changing their glove, the answer is simple, and that is because the glove is custom tailored to fit perfectly. Hearing that, Choi says that he has been wanting a custom for one for his entire life and even went to Japan to get one. Jaiziop tells him that it's a bit different from just measuring his palm size for a custom glove. He then asks Choi if the thought of infield grounders scare him, as from what he has seen, it looks like he has been hit in the face with a ground ball before while playing defense. He explains that people with that kind of trauma tend to have a hard time watching the ball all the way to the end and they flinch or close their eyes at the last moment. Aesop then puts the gloves back into his drawer, but Choi says that he wants to buy them right away. However, Jaiziop immediately tells him that he is bad at negotiating, so he would end up taking a loss, and he does not want to sell something he put so much effort into. Choi then asks what Jaiziop plans to do with those gloves instead, so Jaiziop explains that he will customize them to match someone else's playing style and then sell them, which surprises everyone around. After that, everyone starts bidding for the glove, but Choi quickly speaks up and says that he will pay 2 million won for it. Jaiziop does not hesitate even for a moment and immediately sells the glove for that large amount. Later the same day, Coach Han tells Ji Chang that Jaiziop sold the glove for 2 million won, and after that, the entire inventory is completely sold out. Coach Han also says that it does not seem like the right place to keep Jaiziop, since he has been involved in the recreational baseball world for a long time, and he believes that Jaiziop's brother might be the most knowledgeable person about baseball he has ever met. Coach Han then asks Ji Chang if he wants to work for a professional team, but Ji Chang replies that he already asked once, and Jaiziop said that unless they offer him 100 million won a year, he is not interested at all. The next day, Coach Han and Jaiziop walk together toward the office, and along the way, Coach Han asks Jaiziop how it feels to receive his first paycheck. Jaiziop tells him that he simply buys 2 chickens and eats them with his family, but he also feels that there are still many things he needs to spend money on. Coach Han then explains that fall is the baseball season, and when fall arrives, the demand for baseball always increases because there are social baseball league finals, short-term leagues, company tournaments, and even office workers signing up for private lessons. After that, they enter the office and quickly notice that everyone inside is panicking, so Jaiziop asks Choi what is going on. Choi tells Jaiziop to look at the office, where the CEO is talking with an elderly man. Jaiziop asks who Jaiziop is, and Choi completely freaks out, asking if he really doesn't know who that is. Choi explains that Jaiziop has not been very active lately, but back in the day, he was all over the newspapers, and there was even a drama made about him. He goes on to say that Jaiziop is Park Hongju, the vice chairman of KH Group, but he is more famously known by his nickname, Sakhalin Park. Choi adds that back in the 1990s, there were rumors that KH Group was going bankrupt, and chaos was spreading everywhere, but Hongju personally solved the problem on his own. He says that he flew to Sakhalin and met with the Russian president who was touring the area. Hongju then some things and the Russian president was really impressed by that. However, Jaiziop asks him why he decided to come to their academy in the first place, but then suddenly, all of the people there start to hear Sakhalin yelling really loudly at the chief executive officer about how he is not teaching him baseball like he is supposed to. After hearing what he is yelling about, every single person around gets really surprised and starts to wonder and ask themselves if he actually plays the sport of baseball, but then right at that moment, Sakhalin comes bursting out of the chief executive officer's office in an angry way. He starts yelling very loudly at the chief executive officer for talking without knowing enough about what is really going on, and he angrily says that they are okay with accepting and taking in someone who is in their 60s, but he is being refused and turned down for lessons just because he happens to be in his 70s. However, while all of this is happening, Jaiziop is able to read and see Sakhalin's thoughts inside his head, and when he does this he realizes and figures out that Sakhalin has already used every single one of his connections and has looked through every single baseball academy in the whole city of Seoul, but he still cannot find even one coach who is willing to teach him. After that, Sakhalin then turns around and asks Jaiziop if he wants to say something to him, because he has been staring at him for quite a while now. However, Jaiziop immediately asks him why he is making things so complicated. Everyone around is shocked to hear him say something like that. Jaiziop explains that people are always complaining about how anyone over 70 cannot play baseball here, but the truth is, they really can't. He goes on to say that as people age, their reflexes naturally slow down, and when reflexes decline, playing baseball or similar sports can easily lead to all kinds of dangerous situations. Sakhaline Park responds by saying that may be true for other older people, but he is different because he takes good care of his health, and he asks how someone like him could possibly be unable to play baseball. Jaiziop then tells him that they all know playing 1 or 2 games of baseball is not going to be a problem for him at all, but the real issue is because he is such an important and significant person in society. After hearing what Jaiziop just said, Sakhaline starts to wonder and think about why he is bringing this up to him specifically, so Jaiziop goes on to explain that if he had just brought along even one of his personal doctors with him, this whole entire situation and problem would have been so much easier to deal with and handle. Sakhaline responds by saying that he does not want to go through all of that hassle and trouble just for playing a simple baseball game, but Jaiziop tells him back that he really should not be causing so much trouble and creating all these problems just for playing a baseball game either. After hearing what Jaiziop says to him, Sakhaline immediately calls his secretary on the phone and tells him to get and collect all of Jaiziop's personal information because they are definitely going to see him again at some point later. Jaiziop asks the chief executive officer why Sakhaline came to their academy in the first place, so the chief executive officer explains and tells him that the KH Group's baseball tournament is taking place and happening next week. It is usually only for regular employees to participate in, but this particular year, there has been a special order given for executives to participate in the tournament as well. He further explains that, according to the secretary, Park originally planned to visit some famous coaches he knew, but no one was willing to take him on. Coach Han then asks Jaiziop if the secretary contacted him right after they left, and Jaiziop confirms that they asked if he would take Park on for lessons. Coach Han asks if he agreed, and Jaiziop says that he didn't have a reason to refuse, but they did ask him to be flexible with the lesson times because Sakhaline Park is an extremely busy man. The CEO then decides to take Jaiziop off group lesson duty for the next 10 days and mentions that he will take 20% of his lesson fees to pay another coach who is coming in later that night. Jaiziop starts planning the workout for the next day because he will be doing the first lesson himself. After creating the plan, he heads back to sleep, but then he gets a call from Sakhaline Park, who tells him to get ready and come out immediately for training, even though it is 4 in the morning. At 32, Jaiziop had no one left in his life he could call a close friend. He had few when he was younger, but after he started being able to read people's minds, all those friends slowly drifted away. Jaiziop found that people's assessment of him couldn't have been more different from this harsh reality. However, with a reputation as a top-tier player in human relations, he had managed to sustain his career for over 10 years, so he is condiment this time as well. Sakhaline is a tough guy, but Jaiziop is confident that he can handle him, but Sakhaline turns out to be a far tougher opponent. Even in his 70s, it seems like it wasn't a lie that he still actively managed KH Group and he has endless stamina. No matter how intense the training gets, Sakhaline would always call at exactly 4 a.m. the next day. Up to this point, Jaiziop could understand that someone with such natural stamina would rise to the position of vice chairman, but the most surprising thing is that after suggesting a luxurious breakfast at the hotel, he would suggest splitting the bill. One day, Sakhaline tells Jaiziop that they should go out for dinner together tonight, and Jaiziop starts to have a really bad feeling about this whole thing because he thinks and believes that Sakhaline is not the type of person who would just treat him to an expensive dinner for absolutely nothing in return. It turns out that Jaiziop is completely right about his suspicions because Sakhaline ends up showing him the KH Group documentary video that goes on for a full hour and 40 minutes long. The food they ordered then finally arrives at their table, but Sakhaline ends up falling asleep right there at the table, and for a man who is in his 70s to keep up and maintain that level of intense training all week long, Jaiziop thinks to himself that this is either pure persistence or just plain stubbornness on his part. Jaiziop then tries his best to help and support Sakhaline to take him back home safely, but Sakhaline slowly and quietly says to him that he really needs to do well and perform well in this baseball tournament because he needs to show Ju Young-un a thing or two and prove something to him. After that, the secretary decides to give Jaiziop a ride back home, and on their way, the secretary tells him that he has to get ready for tomorrow's lesson as well. Jaiziop starts wondering why a man in his 70s is so obsessed with baseball, and the words Sakhaline said before they left the restaurant keep bothering him. Jaiziop then asks the secretary about Ju Young-un, and the secretary explains that she is the only daughter of their late chairman and is now the current head of KH Group. After hearing this, Jaiziop realizes that there must be something important going on between Sakhaline and the late chairman's daughter. The secretary then adds that the company's baseball tournament is a very meaningful event, and that the late chairman always used to attend the tournament together with the vice chairman. The next morning, Sakhaline once again calls Jaiziop to come for their training lesson. Jaiziop turns to him with a serious look on his face and tells him that now is the time for him to step away from his executive job. He asks if the secretary actually says this to him, but Jaiziop explains that the vice chairman knows how quiet and careful Secretary Yang always is about sharing information. He keeps questioning how Jaiziop knows this information then. Jaiziop quietly explains that about 90% comes from reading Secretary Yang's thoughts and the other 10% comes from just thinking about everything carefully. Jaiziop then brings up the fact that the vice chairman knows about his baseball history in China. He asks him to think carefully about whether he truly liked playing in China before he even went there in the first place. After thinking for a moment, he slowly admits that he probably did not like it there at all. Jaiziop then continues by explaining his own story in detail, talking about how he tries again and again to join a professional baseball league but completely fails every single time. After that first failure, he goes to Japan to play baseball, hoping things will be different, but it does not work out. Then he tries going to the United States, and after that, he even goes to Korea, but in all of those countries, no team is willing to accept him as a player. In the end, with no other options left, he returns to China and decides to try once more. However, even in China, things still do not go well for him, and eventually, he ends up getting kicked out from there too. When he asks what this means, Jaiziop calmly tells him that even though he is younger than the chairman, he gets kicked out and rejected by different organizations way more times than him. This means he really understands what it feels like when people push you to the side, when an organization labels you as someone who is useless, and when you have to live your life depending on other people feeling sorry for you. After listening to all of this, he just stares at Jaiziop for a really long time before he starts chuckling and says that someone who gets chased away from everywhere like him probably does understand how his heart feels. He then suddenly asks him why he even plays baseball in the first place. Jaiziop seems startled and confused by this question. He continues by saying that he could probably do so many other things way better than playing baseball. Jaiziop argues back that playing baseball is actually the best thing he can do with his life. He tells him that he is just being too modest about his other skills and abilities. Jaiziop then starts telling him a long story about what happens after the company announces the internal baseball tournament rules and regulations. He explains that the chairman of KH Group sends him a nice suit to wear. He seemed really surprised that she sent him a suit. Jaiziop keeps explaining that the secretary who brings the suit to him says the chairman worries about him a lot because he is getting old now, his health is not as good as it used to be, and playing in the tournament will probably be too hard and tiring for his body. Since the chairman does not know very much about baseball and how it works, it would be really great if he just wears the suit and sits on the sidelines during the game to explain all the rules to her instead of actually playing. At first he thinks this is just a normal nice gesture from the chairman, but then he figures out that it is not just him receiving this kind of message. Afterward, Sakhaline pats manager Choi on the shoulder and tells him that manager Choi probably thinks about this decision for a really long time before making it, so there is no need to keep doing things that do not mean anything anymore. He walks past the two people who are standing beside him and says they should leave now because staying there any longer will just make the whole situation worse than it already is. When the three of them get close to the door, they hear a woman's voice asking if everyone is gathered there. The woman is Young-eun, and Jaiziop knows this woman is the main person who leads and represents KH Group right now. Young-eun stands there surrounded by many other workers and staff members who try really hard to flatter her and make her feel good. They ask her if she is feeling better today and tell her that the suit she sends them fits perfectly on their bodies, and they promise to keep it very carefully so they can pass it down to their sons one day. When Jaiziop sees this whole scene happening in front of his eyes, it completely changes how he thinks about her as a person. He realizes that this is just sweet talk and flattery from everyone. He thinks that flattery is not necessarily a bad thing. But for someone who has her level of power and importance, the flattery should probably be way smarter than what he is hearing right now. It turns out that what he thought about her before is just his own imagination and illusion. Seeing all these talented and important people bowing their heads down to her makes him start wondering if anyone originally plans to follow and support the vice chairman in the first place. The more Jaiziop keeps thinking about this whole situation, the stranger and more confusing everything seems to him. If this is really true, then why do all these people call earlier and say they will wear the uniform to support him? He wonders what that old man will do now when the whole situation changes so dramatically like this. At the same time, Young-eun steps forward and asks if the person standing there is Sakhaline. He has to keep acting respectfully and politely in front of her, so Sakhaline bows his head down low as a greeting and tells her it has been a while since they last saw each other. Afterward, Secretary offers to take Sakhaline back home to rest and tells Jaiziop that Sakhaline's face color does not look good at all right now, so it is definitely better to let the vice chairman go home and rest today while thinking about what to do next in this situation. Then he begs with Jaiziop, asking him to please help him out. He says that Jaiziop should at least say something to support and defend the vice chairman in this difficult moment. Once again, Jaiziop's mind fills up completely with thoughts that conflict and fight against each other inside his head. Secretary Yang probably wants him to tell the vice chairman that he cannot participate in this game today and should just go home and rest his body properly. 30 minutes before the game starts, a coach gets bad news when his teammate injures his wrist while defending. With no available players left, he asks Jiziop to play one inning. Jiziop declines with a strange excuse about having hemorrhoids that suddenly hurt. Changdiok feels confused and frustrated by this weird story, so he points to another player nearby, and that chosen person turns out to be Sakhalin. On the sidelines, Jiziop whispers instructions to Sakhalin about how the opponent will intentionally let him walk and explains defensive signals using his hand movements. Afterward, Sakhalin gets to the field and grips the bat as he prepares to face the pitcher on the mound. The pitcher feels enormous pressure because such an important company figure stands at the plate staring at him intensely. He wonders if he is actually nervous right now during what should be just a casual company tournament. Jiziop notices the situation looks bad, so he claps his hands multiple times to help the pitcher refocus and tells him to stop overthinking and just concentrate. When the pitch signal gets given, the young player quickly gains momentum and throws forward with all his strength. A loud sound echoes as Sakhalin ignores the ball and it lands firmly in the catcher's hand. Sakhalin finally accepts Jab's advice, realizing Jiziop is right that the pitcher has no intention of directly challenging him. Another pitch comes flying toward him, and he swings while thinking that letting the ball hit him will complicate everything badly. He now understands why Jab keeps throwing this type of pitch during their practice sessions together over the past days. After that, Sakhalin hits the ball and it travels past the fair line into foul territory, and the spectators in the front row still praise him anyway, impressed that someone his age can hit like that. Jiziop keeps urging Sakhalin to run faster, even scolding him for being too slow. The competitive vice president pants heavily but manages to curse back, saying he will deal with Jiziop after the game ends. Although he sees the goal post ahead, the distance remains a big problem and he wonders if he can reach it. Putting worried thoughts aside, Sakhalin jumps forward with complete determination to reach the base no matter what. The entire stadium falls silent as everyone waits for the commentator to announce the final result. After a tense moment, the umpire signals twice, declaring the play invalid, and this means they lose. Sakhalin leaves with a disappointed face, saying the call is clearly wrong because he is obviously faster and should be safe. He complains they need video replay technology next year. Sakhalin calls Jiziop over, wondering why he stays quiet instead of yelling at him. Jiziop denies ever being like that and explains baseball does not always go the way people want, adding he does not understand how Sakhalin gets distracted during such an important moment. The two stop at a chair in the waiting room where Sakhalin pours out his heart, explaining he feels too excited when the pitch comes. Sakhalin scolds this crazy guy for comforting people, and Jiziop says that even though Sakhalin does not get the final hit in the game, he still achieves part of his goal that he wanted. Jiziop explains and tells him that even if Chairman Young-eun hates him right now, at this moment she cannot get rid of him yet from the company, and maybe she will give him a new job and position. Sakhalin laughs out loud, thinking to himself that this boy believes everything will go his way perfectly, and outside he acts dismissive and cool, but inside he quietly acknowledges the positive feeling Jiziop brings him every time. It has been a long time since he has had this much fun training and spending time with this kid around him. Jiziop offers to invite the vice president for a meal together, emphasizing and saying that Sakhalin should treat him because his effort is too much and deserves reward. However, a phone call suddenly interrupts them and Sakhalin tells Jiziop to wait for a second because Secretary Yang is calling him on the phone. He answers quickly, asking what if everything is alright, but Secretary Yang tells him that someone wants to see him right now. Sakhalin rushes back to his company building, and as soon as he opens the door, he asks what is going on at this late hour with Chairman Young-eun being here. It turns out that she is the person Secretary Yang mentioned on the phone earlier. Young-eun hands him the terms and conditions document and explains she just reorganizes the senior personnel in the company, mentioning that several executives will be transferred to different positions at various organizations. Sakhalin cannot believe what he reads, realizing all these names on the paper are people who work with him for many years and helped build KH Group from the ground up. These people will leave now, and new people will replace them eventually, which makes him feel so empty inside just thinking about it. Young-eun's unresponsive behavior embarrasses Sakhalin completely, and he blushes and quickly tries to explain himself by calling her chairman, but then Young-eun speaks up, asking if in his eyes she still seems like a child to him. Sakhalin tells her he knows she leads KH Group very well, but the reason he has not retired until now is something she already understands clearly. Young-eun replies that she knows it is because of the promise he makes to her father about getting into the top 10 corporations in the country. However, she needs to make one thing very clear to him right now, which is that she does not intend to give that task to him anymore. In a short moment, Sakhalin understands completely, realizing she is finally going to push him aside from his position. Suddenly Sakhalin smiles because the promise to Chairman Young is what keeps Sakhalin going until now, but at the same time, it also becomes a considerable burden on his shoulders. No matter how tired he feels, he cannot stop working toward this goal. Perhaps it is finally time to leave this responsibility to someone else and cheer them on from behind instead. Sakhalin consoles himself that he should really retire from his position now. However, Young-eun calls him back before he leaves and hands him a small bag, telling him to take it with him. He asks what this item is, and she explains this is something her father never lets go of until he dies. Sakhalin takes it and opens it carefully, discovering a ring with the letter C engraved on the surface. Young-eun explains it is a symbol of her father's distant hope from back in 1996 when the team makes it to the Fall Baseball League for the first time. Her father feels so happy that he keeps saying he smells victory coming, and he has this ring made right away to celebrate. Sakhalin reminisces about that time, remembering he tries to stop him but fails completely. He even teases him that this ring is a symbol of delusion and he thinks he throws it away, but he does not expect him to keep it until now. Young-eun smiles and says she thinks the same thing too, but when she visits him in the hospital, her father is always holding it tight in his hand without saying a word, just staring out the window silently. She admits she originally intends to keep this secret until the end, specifically the fact that her father still has regrets about that baseball team. Sakhalin feels quite curious about this revelation. After hearing her story, he wonders why she is showing him this ring now. Young-eun tells him it is because she finds the person who would take care of the team in her father's place. She asks him if he knows what she realizes when she watches him play in today's game. The moment he throws himself to catch the ground ball in the field, she has her answer right there. After that, Young-eun expresses her wish for Sakhalin to take responsibility for the baseball team and fulfill this last wish her father never speaks about openly. 3 days later, Jae-seop is playing video games on his computer as usual in his room, and he fails this level again and thinks to himself that he surely will win this time for sure. However, Jae-seop cannot help but feel surprised when he hears what Secretary says about the KH Cannon Stadium. Secretary explains that the vice president currently serves as the CEO and acting owner of the KH Cannons, and he will leave the position of CEO of KH Global. Jae-seop thinks to himself that there has not been an official announcement yet about Sakhalin working with the baseball team, but the position of baseball team representative is considered a leisurely position even in large corporations. He wonders whether he should congratulate him or comfort him now, but those worries of Jae-seop turn out to be really unnecessary at the KH Cannon Stadium. Sakhalin gets furious and asks if they have brains or not, questioning what kind of baseball coach operates like a revolving door where the person who keeps doing it again and the person who gets fired comes back as a candidate. He wants to know how this baseball team has been operating all this time, and if they do not go find a new coach right away, next time they all need to jump into the West Sea. Then Sakhalin chases them out, asking what they are doing and why they are not going to find a coach right away. Jae-seop, who just arrived, makes a quick comment about how during the company baseball tournament Sakhalin keeps complaining about being old and past his prime age, yet he is still quite loud and energetic now. Sakhalin is about to step out and call those people over when he suddenly notices Jae-seop standing there watching. He smiles happily and greets him warmly, saying he made a lunch appointment but asking why he called him here to this location. He tells Jae-seop not to keep standing there outside and to come inside the room. Everything happens just like Jae-seop predicts earlier in his mind. Jae-seop asks what he means by saying that to him. Sakhalin reminds him that during the company baseball tournament game, he said it does not matter if he does not hit the ball well as long as he gets the desired result in the end. Chairman Young-eun feels very moved after watching his game and performance, and she says she might give him a new job and position, and it really comes true just like that prediction. Suddenly Sakhalin calls out and tells Jae-seop that his goal is to help the Cannons win the championship within 3 years. He explains he is getting old and cannot prolong it any longer, so his plan is to take the Cannons to the top of the Korean League within 3 years and then retire with no more lingering around. Jae-seop feels a little bewildered when he hears that, wondering how they can reach the top when they are a bottom-ranked team that never goes to the fall baseball season before. Sakhalin rests his chin and continues, saying the plan is ready, but the problem is the people, because this team seriously lacks talent, and most importantly it lacks people who share the same ambition as him. He decides and tells Jae-seop to come to work for the baseball team. Jae-seop asks if he is recruiting him, and Sakhalin replies that it is right, but with just his position as personal coach, he cannot be a general manager or regular manager. Sakhalin immediately feels surprised and angrily shouts, asking when he ever says he will give him the position of director or manager, pointing out that someone who is not selected for the professional league and has to play in China should not dare to dream like that. Jae-seop then asks why, and Sakhalin explains that the roles of director and manager are very important, but he thinks the role of the person right next to the players is equally important. When Jae-seop realizes he means assistant coach, Sakhalin praises him for catching on quickly. He says that next week there will be an announcement to recruit assistant coaches for next year's spring training camp, and he is sure there will be many excellent applicants, but he will arrange for Jae-seop to be accepted. Shortly after accepting the offer, Sakhalin officially begins his baseball team duties, and as soon as he is appointed, he announces a complete overhaul of the team. A reporter asks what his upcoming goal is, and he declares his goal is to help the Cannons win the Korean Championship with no other goal than that. Jae-seop submits his application, interviews, and prepares everything, and now there is only one thing left. At that moment, Jae-seop receives a message from KH Cannons congratulating him for passing the assistant coach selection round for this year's training. Later that evening, Jae-seop's family holds a cozy party to congratulate him for joining the Cannons. The next day at the baseball stadium, people congratulate Jae-seop on getting a job with the Cannons and thank him for his part-time work. After chatting for a while, Jae-seop suddenly remembers he has something for Coach Han, knowing he likes Korean beef and feeling he has not been able to give him anything this whole time. Coach Han receives it and feels so moved that he quickly rushes to hug Jae-seop, saying he will miss him so much. They laugh and joke about whether Coach Han is crying. Jae-seop takes another bus to the KH Cannons, happily thinking everyone is so kind to him. Suddenly his phone vibrates and messages from his family pour in, with his mother asking why he does not tell her about not coming home for 2 months, his father wishing him a good start in his new role, and his older brother asking him to bring back some orange chocolate. Jae-seop cannot help but exclaim about how enthusiastic they are, wondering if they have expectations of him now. He replies with another message saying he will be careful this time and definitely has to do well. Finally, he is almost there as the bus announcement rings out that the next stop is the City Hall and those going to the stadium should get off at this stop. Later, Jae-seop runs into Secretary Yang, who greets him and says he will just call him Kim Jae-seop from now on since he is a team employee now. Secretary Yang asks if he is looking good, and Jae-seop asks if the vice president is well. Secretary Yang explains he is very busy, even busier after taking office, and he is currently preparing to go abroad for spring training, so it will be difficult to see each other for a while. Jae-seop guesses Secretary must be busy too but wonders why he is here today since it is his first day of work. Secretary continues explaining that actually only the business support team knows about the vice president's directive for him to work here. He instructs him carefully that rumors will inevitably spread, so if anyone asks about his relationship with the vice president, just say he knows him and has met him a few times, which will be enough to stop further questions. He also suggests that when talking about previous work experience, he should only mention his experience in the independent leagues in the US and Japan. Hearing this, Jae-seop understands tacitly that he should not mention China to avoid being looked down upon. Secretary Yang confirms that the vice president wants him to adapt smoothly to the domestic league. Afterwards, Jae-seop gets led into a meeting room to meet the other staff members. The head of the Cannon operations team introduces himself, and a woman next to him introduces herself as the deputy manager of the same team. She congratulates everyone on overcoming the fierce competition and explains their official contract with the Cannons will be for 3 months, but those who excel in their training assistant duties will be selected to join the management team when the season opens. She asks everyone to introduce themselves, but suddenly the deputy manager becomes incredibly tense and apologizes, saying she has an urgent matter and must leave immediately. This leaves the new recruits utterly bewildered, and they keep murmuring among themselves about whether it is about a player's contract renewal. Someone mentions it is probably about salary negotiations that are being prolonged. A young man introduces himself as Young Jin, saying he graduated from a high school and played baseball at university, and he was even picked in the 8th round in the draft. Hearing this, the others cannot help but admire him for having a baseball player background. At this moment, Jae-seop thinks to himself that 8th round is not anything special and is just typical bragging of former players. After the others finish their introductions, someone turns to Jae-seop and asks what about him. They feel equally astonished and ask Jae-seop many questions about being a baseball player, about Koreans in the Japanese Independent League, whether the American Independent League also selects players through tryouts, and about coaching in the Japanese League. Seeing everyone bombarding him with questions, Jae-seop tells them to hold on and ask one thing at a time. They keep praising him, saying he is really amazing because all their baseball friends have quit, and if you are not drafted into the professional leagues, most people choose a different path, so the fact that he is still playing in the Independent League is truly admirable. Jae-seop thanks them and tells everyone to eat before the food gets cold. Suddenly Young Jin curiously asks why Jae-seop chooses the Independent League when even if you are not drafted into the pros, there are still ways to play baseball in Korea, such as becoming a development player for a professional team. He continues to question and taunt, asking if it is because he does not receive any such offers, and after saying that, Young Jin smiles sarcastically. Seeing this, someone quickly intervenes and says they should talk about that later. At the same time, Jae-seop responds by asking if Young Jin is jealous because everyone is only talking to him. Meanwhile, Chung Deok cannot help but worry about what he should do now since he runs into a former baseball player, thinking that athletes hate things like Japanese anime. He wonders if rumors will spread within the company, and his body trembles with fear. Jae-seop suddenly thinks he has experienced this before and then speaks up, asking if that is magical girl Yuri-chan. Changdeok asks in surprise how Jaizeop knows about Yuri-chan. Jaizeop explains he mentions during his self-introduction that he plays in the Japanese Independent League for a few years, and some of his teammates like anime, so he gets to watch it with them a few times and finds it quite interesting. Changdeok brightens up upon hearing this and smiles, saying he does not expect Jaizeop to watch Yuri-chan too. The next morning, Jaizeop gets to the cafeteria and worries that morning practice ends late today, so he wonders if there is any food left. Looking at the empty trays, Jaizeop sighs that it is all gone and he will have to make do with something. Suddenly Changdeok's voice calls out to Jaizeop, telling him to come over because he gets him a portion earlier. Jaizeop thanks him and Changdeok explains he sees him doing morning exercises, so he figures he will not be back right away and grabs a portion for him. Jaizeop says he does not have to do that and Changdeok smiles cheerfully, replying that he cannot skip meals because they will be busy running around once they get to the training location, so he should eat up to have energy. Changdeok asks if Jaizeop has actually never seen magical girl Yuri-chan before. Jaizeop feels surprised and asks how he knows. Changdeok explains he thinks about it last night and realizes Yuri-chan is a new anime that comes out this year, so there is no way Jaizeop could have seen it 8 years ago in Japan. He adds that he does not mean to blame Jaizeop for lying because he probably says that because Changdeok feels embarrassed, which is very thoughtful. After that, Changdeok mentions he has worked at Baseball Finders for almost 10 years, which ranks among the top 3 baseball statistics websites in the US along with other major sites. The player evaluation data from this website is even used to determine salaries for regular team players. Jaizeop praises him, saying that it is amazing and Changdeok says he is just someone who often leaves negative comments under other people's analysis articles, so he knows all of Jaizeop's information comes up with just a search of his name. Jaizeop asks him if he knows about his career in China and his time playing there. Changdeok replies that he does know about it but since Jaizeop does not mention it or bring it up, he figures there must be a good reason for that, so he keeps quiet about it. He thinks that it is a good choice because in the baseball world there is still a bad habit of categorizing and looking down on others for things like that background. However, he hopes and wishes that Jaizeop is not too ashamed of his experiences in China, because things like cultural differences and the developmental potential of other leagues will be absolutely essential and important if he wants to work in the team's operations department long term. After hearing this, Jaizeop breathes a sigh of relief and he thinks to himself that at first he thought he would be a good motivator for Changdeok, but it turns out that he will be a good motivator for him too in return. In the afternoon, preparations for spring training officially begin. Those assigned to the stadium get thoroughly drilled and just as Changdeok says earlier, they carry luggage all day, then use rakes to level the field. The manager tells everyone they work hard today and tomorrow's work will start early in the morning, so please keep that in mind. The guidebooks for this spring training are over there, so please take one on the way out to refer to for work. Those who are ready should please board the bus now. But Changdeok notices something wrong with the team roster and points out that a certain player is on the second team roster. Jaizeop recognizes this is the cannon cleanup hitter, a very important player. He actually meets this famous player he only hears about before when the second team players arrive for spring training the next day. Usually, the emotions players feel upon joining Team 2 are the same, which includes disappointment at not being able to join Team 1 and anxiety about whether they can perform well. This first day is important precisely because of this gets written in the guidebook. Jaizeop smiles, thinking so this is the role of the operations staff and although unseen, the role is to help the players maintain their best condition. Suddenly Jaizeop notices something happening over there and wonders what is going on. Everyone there is waiting for today's main character, the cleanup hitter and the team's hope who has been dropped to Team 2. The next day, the Cannons Team 2 spring training begins along with the players shouting to please take care of them. The coach tells them that with that kind of spirit, they cannot make it to Team 1, so they need to run 2 more laps around the field. While the players warm up with light fielding practice, the staff also begin their training support work. Although it is just simple manual labor, no one seems too bothered by it at all. Perhaps this is because while organizing equipment, Jaizeop overhears a conversation between some team members about a certain player. They say he is completely different from the other players, and his perfect physique is like looking at a star from the main team. They hear scouts already start approaching him with interest. It becomes known that this player, since joining the Cannons 4 years ago as a rookie straight out of high school, builds a truly outstanding career as an outfielder. He wins the Rookie of the Year award with 30 home runs and 30 stolen bases, then achieves the record of 40 home runs and 40 stolen bases the following year to win the season MVP award. Every year since then, he consistently delivers dominant performances and has been Cannon's sole hope, so it is natural for fans to believe he will make the main team. Someone asks why this player is participating in Team 2 spring training. The female assistant suggests she tries looking into it through articles, but strangely there are no related articles about it anywhere. She hears he has a conflict with the new coach. Jaizeop, after listening for a while, feels skeptical, thinking something does not feel right about a team superstar participating in Team 2 spring training without a word from the club. Just then, young Jin comes over and explains there is no need to worry about that because it is just a formality. His words leave the other two puzzled, asking what he means by formality and if there is no special meaning behind it. Young Jin asks if they remember on the first day of gathering when the manager has to rush out, explaining that at that time he goes to sign a contract with this player. He hears the player is the last one to sign a contract among the players, so he cannot participate in the physical test held right before spring training. He gets sent down to Team 2 because he does not participate in the physical test. Young Jin says that actually for this player, the physical test is a piece of cake, but if he does not participate, how can he be included in the Team 1 roster, so the only option left is to send him down to Team 2. If this gets publicly announced, it will cause a lot of noise from various sides, but the club already has a solution for this situation. Young Jin mentions it is fortunate for the team but a shame this makes the player extremely dissatisfied with the arrangement. He adds this might sound harsh, but if the player really falls into a slump, it will be a chance to make a mark by helping him find a way out of it. Someone teases young Jin, saying as soon as they hear him call the player by name, they know the two have something going on between them. After being teased, he tries to explain they only meet once or twice in high school and only greet each other occasionally after that. The coach overhears someone calling him and it turns out to be Jaeseop asking if he can try. Jaeseop confidently tells Coach Park he uses to throw regularly during practice at his old team, and if given the chance, he wants to try throwing now. But the coach feels skeptical of his abilities, thinking this kid is not from a professional background, just some wanderer from some independent league, and he hears he even gets cut from a team in China and does not know when to step in. At this point the coach cannot throw the ball himself, so he tells him to go ahead and give it a try. Jaeseop replies happily, thanking the coach, then asking if he can take a look at the player's training plan for today. The coach feels puzzled and asks what he wants to see that for. Jaeseop explains that at KH they call it the Strengths and Weaknesses Checklist or the Training Checklist, and each team calls it something different, so he is not sure, but anyway he wants to see the list of training items for the players today. In the end, the coach agrees and says that they also call it the training plan, but right after that, he suddenly asks why Jaeseop even needs to look at it and whether he plans to throw it based on the player's training plan at all. As the coach watches Jaeseop's professional attitude, he starts to feel slightly impressed, thinking that this guy seems to have studied the theory properly and knows what he is talking about, so he decides to give him a chance. The coach then tells him not to think too much for today and to simply throw the ball in a way that allows the players to hit comfortably and smoothly. Before beginning, Jaeseop turns around and asks if this is similar to pre-game batting practice, and the coach answers that it is something like that. Even so, the coach still does not truly believe in Jaeseop's actual ability, thinking that he may only be good at talking and that the real result will show soon, so he tells him to stop standing there to hurry up. The coach keeps thinking to himself that this kid does not have a clear background, but at least he has the will to try. Jaeseop says if they are ready, he will start throwing now. Before his pitch, Coach Park remains arrogant, thinking maybe teaching him a thing or two would not be so bad. Finally, Jaeseop throws his pitch and his pitch satisfies everyone as the ball goes over the fence. The players comment that it is a great throw and the hitting feels good today, asking why the ball feels so good. At that moment, Coach Park recognizes his exceptional ability, thinking this kid is pretty good and his control is very refined. He has not even seen the training plan yet, but he already grasps the players' preferred pitches, and the batters will think their hitting feels so good today and wonder if their training is finally paying off, thinking at this rate they can compete for a spot on the first team. Sure enough, Jaeseop's ability also catches the attention of the head coach, who asks Coach Park who that kid is. He reveals that he is a guy named Jaeseop and he must have thrown it to about 10 people already. The head coach tells him he is in charge of that from now on. After Jaeseop's throws, the players come up to him one after another, asking if he will be throwing to them tomorrow too and if possible could he throw them 5 more pitches than today. Another says the same, and someone else asks for 10 more pitches. One senior says he likes the pitching machine style. Jaeseop feels secretly pleased, thinking so working on multiple teams without a pitching machine actually helps him here. He tells everyone to calm down because it would not be fair if he throws it at one person and not the others, so he will see them all tomorrow. Seeing Jaeseop surrounded by so many people, some seniors become jealous, saying throwing batting practice is such a respected position now and they should have tried throwing too. Jaeseop smirks, thinking being treated like this does not feel bad at all. At that moment, Coach Park walks up to him and tells him that he did a good job, while also apologizing because he admits that he fails to notice his talent earlier than he should have. The head coach also clearly likes his pitching style and mentions that it has been a very long time since the team has a practice session that feels this proper and meaningful. After saying this, the coach hands him a list and explains that he should use it only as a player training plan for today as a reference, and starting from tomorrow, he should come directly to the coach's room to receive the list from him instead. Jaiziop finds this strange and starts to wonder about it, because he knows that assistants are usually not allowed to enter that room due to confidentiality rules. The coach then confirms that this rule is true but explains that Jaiziop is an exception because this comes directly from the coach's order, and no one would be bold enough to go against it. Changdeok reveal the name Jangho, and just hearing the name makes Jaiziop feel stunned in silence. Changdeok smiles at Jaiziop, saying of course the team leader does not specify who it is, but in canons there is only one person who sets those kinds of records. It seems like Jangho has been struggling with his hitting technique since the second half of last season. Jaiziop asks if he notices that, and he replies analysis technology is pretty good these days and just a few clicks shows everything right away. Anyway, it seems like Jangho has been trying to adjust, and there are signs that he tries to change his batting stance, and the data also shows that he tries to adjust his timing. If this happens at the beginning of the season, it probably could have been fixed, but unfortunately the season ends right when he is struggling. During the off-season, Jangho tries various ways to fix it and completely loses his balance. There are players like that when baseball is not going well, and they see nothing but baseball like they are obsessed with it. Jaiziop thinks to himself, so the rumors about him returning to the first team soon are all nonsense. Then he asks how Changdeok figures out how to fix it for Jangho since many people already give him advice, wondering if he discovers something others do not find. Changdeok explains it is not anything groundbreaking and anyone who does strategy analysis could have come up with this solution, and he just happens to look at the right data. Instead of focusing on the launch angle, focus on exit velocity to generate more powerful hits through muscle memory. Jaiziop feels confused about this exit velocity thing he stammers about. Back at his apartment later, Jaiziop yawns and says he feels so sleepy because he overworks himself yesterday. He recalls asking Changdeok how to make this exit velocity thing feasible and he gets stumped by the question. He has a thought wondering if he is really going to stay up all night asking about exit velocity. Modern scientific baseball is not as simple as he thinks, and he used to think it is just some mathematical games detached from real baseball, but the strategy analysis team does this every day, so he has to respect that. He goes to the development team dormitory, the meeting room and the training room where he overhears a conversation about focusing on the ball's exit velocity from today. Jaiziop becomes even more curious about exit velocity since Changdeok mentions that yesterday too, and if that is the solution Changdeok proposes to the player, is it Jangho? Inside the training room, he receives the board with the training plan, and they have two more people today who have just dropped from the first team the day before yesterday, so they must be pretty down and need to hit comfortably. He quickly calls Coach Park back and says he has a question. The coach asks what it is, and he asks where Jangho is training since he only sees him on the first day and has not seen him since. Coach Park says that kid is a real outsider and he does not know why he chooses baseball when he should have chosen something like running a marathon. He continues excitedly that normally he would force him to participate in group training, but when he is in such a serious slump, just pretend you did not hear anything. Jangho looks tough, but he is actually quite sensitive, and if people keep talking about his struggles, it could prolong things. Anyway, there will probably be an article about it sooner or later, but they have to try to prevent it as much as possible, and it would be better if Jangho finds a solution himself soon. Jaiziop is washing his hands and thinks to himself about a solution, wondering if it is a personal problem. How can he find it on his own when he needs help from those around him? As he thinks about it, Jangho appears, and he wonders if he sees him walk by, thinking it would be weird to pretend they do not know each other, but it feels awkward to greet him because he is so famous. While he is hesitating, Jangho speaks up first, asking if the fourth floor is not a restricted area and saying he hears that besides baseball club staff, no one is allowed on the fourth floor. Jaiziop gets a little tense, thinking so he does see him. Jangho asks again if he is a reporter and where he is from, saying depending on his answer, the club might take separate action against him. Jaiziop hurriedly waves his hand, saying he thinks there is a misunderstanding and he is an assistant coach for the Cannons. Jangho becomes even more puzzled, saying assistant coaches are not allowed on the fourth floor either. Jaiziop explains that it is true, but he just got assigned to throw batting practice starting today, so he comes up here to get the training plan from the coach, and the head coach also approves it. Jangho seems surprised about the head coach, saying now that he thinks about it, he thinks he hears about this. Jaiziop remains silent but curses inwardly that he suspects him like that but does not even apologize, which is typical of these talented baseball players. Suddenly Jangho asks if he is a player before and Jaiziop readily admits it. After hearing that, he asks more questions about how long he plays baseball. Changdeok looks over in surprise, asking if that is Jangho and if he really is coming this way. Jaiziop greets him saying they meet again, but Jangho goes straight to the point. Jaiziop smiles outwardly but curses inwardly that this kid is so young and yet so arrogant. Jangho says Jaiziop tells him earlier that if he cannot solve it, He should come back to him, so here he is and he should tell him how to overcome a mental slump. Jaiziop chuckles and says of course he will explain, but first they should move over to the sofa and Changdeok should come along too. Changdeok does not expect him to come too and Jang Ho feels surprised as well, asking if this guy is coming too. Changdeok adds that is right and Jang Ho will not be comfortable talking if he is there. Jaiziop laughs and says no, he needs to be here because the one who explains Jang Ho's solution to overcoming his slump is not him but assistant coach Chang Diak. He feels extremely surprised, asking what he is talking about and what he needs to explain since Jaiziop is the one who plays with him, so he should go explain it. Jaiziop insists no, he has to do it and the idea he proposes just needs to be explained in detail to Jang Ho. Finally, Jang Ho interrupts this mental struggle and tells them to wait a minute. He looks at Changdeok and asks if he means this man will explain the strategy analysis team's measures. Jaiziop immediately corrects him, saying not this man but assistant coach Chang Diak. Jang Ho gets annoyed and asks if he is kidding, saying he has been wrestling with the strategy analysis team all day today, and now Jaiziop is telling him he has to sit and listen to more strategy analysis stuff. He turns sharply and leaves, saying enough because this is ridiculous and he does not expect anything from a team batting practice pitcher anyway and he is going to hit while they too can do whatever they want. Changdeok feel bewildered and ask Jaiziop what they should do now. Jaiziop thinks to himself that he wants to swing a bat this late, and as expected of a regular team player, this kid is pretty cute but he will not let it go like this. Then he calls him back, and Jang Ho turns back annoyed asking what he wants. Jaiziop says there is going to be an article published in a sports media outlet tomorrow. Hearing that, Jang Ho freezes and asks who leaks it and if there is going to be an article about his slump. Jaiziop grins and says it sounds exciting, because starting tomorrow things are going to get very lively around him. Once the sports outlet publishes an article, other media outlets will not stay quiet and then the internet will be buzzing with comments. Moreover, lately retired baseball players all become YouTubers and those seniors will swarm him like bees and ask him to say a word on their channels, and just thinking about it is exhausting. Jang Ho weakens and asks what he wants him to do. Jaiziop pats his shoulder and says just 10 minutes because they are not as bad as he thinks. Jang Ho replies fine, just 10 minutes. He thinks to himself it seems like this guy leaks his information to the media, otherwise how would he know about the article tomorrow, so he will just pretend to listen, and if anything seems off, he will report it to his superiors and make him disappear. They go to a room and Changdeok begins, telling him not to focus on the launch angle of his swing but pay attention to the exit velocity instead. He explains that when a player hits, they have to use equipment like special tracking systems which are commonly used in sports to track the movement of the sporting object. Jaiziop feels utterly bewildered about what the hell that old man is talking about, but Jang Ho simply says he already hears all that before. Changdeok chuckles awkwardly asking if that is so. Jang Ho thinks to himself the analysis from the domestic teams only gives him a headache and does not help his baseball at all because they keep talking in English and who can understand, and even if he asks more questions, he will not know anything since he does not have high expectations anyway. Jaiziop silently observes him, then he says to Changdeok that he thinks if he is a baseball player who does not want to study, he would not understand a word he is saying. Jang Ho feels surprised that someone who plays baseball for 20 years does not understand this stuff. Just then Jaiziop adds it has to be as easy to understand as if he is explaining it to an elementary school student, and he should make it easy to understand so he can understand it himself. Jang Ho feels comforted thinking so it is not just him who does not get this. Changdeok takes the feedback and says he understands, explaining that exit velocity might be hard to translate but simply put, exit velocity is when Jaiziop interrupts saying he does not know English, so say it again. Changdeok tries to explain statistically, but no matter how he tries, Jaiziop blocks him saying he does not understand statistics, so say it again. Changdeok tries again with decimals, but he still refuses, saying he does not know math either. Finally, Changdeok cannot take it anymore and shouts asking how he can explain it easier if he does not use technical terms because the basic concept will be diluted. Jaiziop pretends to turn away, asking if he says he wants to hear English when he just wants an easy-to-understand explanation. Changdeok gets even angrier easily, so to put it simply just hit the ball hard. Then he turns to Jang Ho and tells him he has been stressed lately and his hitting has not been good, so try to let go of everything and just focus on hitting hard. Changdeok tells Jang Ho directly that to hit the ball harder and with more power, he just needs to follow the numbers on this graph carefully. Jaiziop then shows him that graph, which is data analyzing his batting performance, and the higher this red part is on the chart, the better he hit the ball with force. Jang Ho then asks them that during the batting practice sessions, they can use this data to figure out if the ball they hit was a solid hit or not. Changdeok then gets really excited that Jang Ho finally got it and understood the concept, and he says that this is exactly why the analysis team spends all day long staring at their tablets and computers. Jang Ho then says and tells them that he easily understands it now because Jaiziop explained it really well to him, and he asks Jaiziop how he can always tell when he is not understanding something during explanations. The next day after all of that, Changdeok wakes up Jaiziop from his sleep because he overslept badly, and they are totally getting late for their schedule. Changdeok tells him to wear whatever he wants as they need to get out fast, and if they don't, then they are going to get yelled at. Just then, right at that moment, Jaiziop receives a phone call from the coach who immediately starts yelling at him loudly. The coach tells him to get some rest in the morning hours and then come to the main ground after lunchtime is over. He continues and says that Jang Ho will be doing live batting in front of the manager this afternoon to show his skills. Later on, after that call, Jaiziop and Changdeok get to the field where another coach welcomes them warmly and says that they are going to observe and watch Jang Ho's live batting performance today. Changdeok then tells Jaiziop directly that the atmosphere feels really tense and serious, because they set up equipment just for live batting, and now even the operations manager who is usually nowhere to be seen around here and reporters are here to watch. After all of that setup, Jang Ho enters the field to start his batting test and performance, and Jaiziop thinks to himself that even though it is not his problem to worry about, he still feels really nervous about what will happen. After that, Jang Ho hits the ball very hard, but it quickly drops back to the ground, which makes everyone else wonder if his condition is really that bad. Jaiziop thinks that the hit itself is actually very strong, and it reminds him of what Hyungnim said the day before. Jang Ho then walks over to a staff member and asks him to check the batting data from that moment, and the man feels surprised because it is unusual for Jang Ho to care about data like that. After looking at the data, Jang Ho returns to the field and Jaiziop along with the other coach thinks that he might be trying to show them that he now checks his stats. Even so, Jaiziop believes it is impressive because understanding theory and using it in real play are completely different things, yet Jang Ho is brave enough to try applying it right there in front of so many people. After that, Jang Ho manages to hit a long ball and his coach along with the others starts thinking that he is finally back in top form, believing that even the earlier hit was actually very impressive. Later, inside the manager's room, the head of operations for the KH Cannons asks Jang Ho what really happened earlier, explaining that he completely panicked after reading a sports Hansung article that morning. He says that if Jang Ho had not shown a good performance afterward, the mood of the entire team would have been totally ruined. At that moment, another coach asks the operations head if this is the right time to promote Jang Ho to the first team and the head replies that it is almost confirmed already. The head then tells Jang Ho that he has many responsibilities this season and adds that there are some training assistants who want to work with the first team as well. Feeling confused, Jang Ho asks who they are, and the head explains that one is Changdeok from the analysis team, and the other is Jaiziop, who works as the batting ball pitcher. Hearing that, the KH Cannons analysis head says and explains that Changdeok is a really solid and dependable guy, and he is absolutely essential for their entire analysis team to function properly. The head then suggests and proposes that they should go ahead and promote Changdeok to the first team, but with this decision and choice, they might end up hurting the morale and motivation for everyone else on the team. After hearing what the head just said, Jang Ho responds by saying that if that is the final decision that they are making, then he completely understands and accepts it, and he will stay with the second team and prepare himself for the upcoming season. After hearing Jang Ho say those words, all of the heads in the room get really confused and puzzled, and they ask him if he is actually in his right senses and thinking clearly right now. Jang Ho explains and says that his suggestion about promoting Changdeok and Jaiziop to the first team was really about making sure and ensuring that he can perform well in games, but it is not really his main concern or worry at all. He further adds and continues by saying that he really needs those specific people like Changdeok who can teach him how to play his very own style, and Jaiziop is the exact person who understands him and his needs completely. The next day, Sakhalin asks his secretary about the situation on the article, so he says that there wasn't anything that require a special response and he received reports that Jang Ho performed well during the live batting session. He also says that Jaiziop played a significant role in helping Jang Ho regain his form, and thanks to that, he has been promoted to the first team this time. Sakhalin asks him if he is sure that his influence isn't the reason behind it, but the secretary says that according to the report even the head level agreed on Jaiziop's promotion to the first team. He also says that the head said it's because Jaiziop has good insights and the ability to assess players' mental state, condition, and other things. Sakhalin then asks him what role Jaiziop is going to take in the first team, so the secretary says that it's not decided yet, but it seems he will work under Song Byum, the head of the international affairs team. Meanwhile, Jaiziop tells the coach with glasses that he feels like he has gotten more opportunities than the other training assistants, but the coach asks if he is going to slip away without giving anything in return. Jaiziop quickly says that he will get him a good iced Americano, but the coach laughs and says that it's alright. The coach then gives him a roster of players called up to the first team for this spring camp, and he has jotted down notable points about the guys who were in the second team until last season. Moreover, he says that it's awkward for him to offer advice to the first team players, so he hope he take the time to understand this information. Jaiziop then says that when he first joined here, he saw that everyone at the Cannons was working hard as the coach, and it made him wonder why they haven't been able to reach where they can experience fall baseball for years. Hearing that, the coach says that if he knew that, then he wouldn't still be stuck in the second team and would be managing the first team. Soon, Jaiziop and Changdeok arrives in Okinawa, Japan, thinking that they are going to get all kind of top-notch equipment and the grass on the field is going to be perfect as well. Once they arrive at the first team's field, they are horrified to see how bad it looks. Jaiziop tells Changdeok that this is pretty common in Okinawa, but he asks him if he has been here before when he were in the Japanese Independent League. Jaiziop says that it was total chaos back then, and whenever they tried to train, a typhoon would roll in and they couldn't even go outside. The next day, they would find the baseball field half destroyed because of the storm, and it got so bad that the players had to fix the field themselves after the rain messed it up. Jaiziop then wonders what's the reason behind them setting up spring training in Okinawa, so Changdeok says that it's because of the practice games, as most Japanese pro baseball teams set up their spring camps in Okinawa, so it's easy to find practice game opponents. Just then, a guy arrives and adds that they can't ignore the fact that their players tend to focus more when going up against Japanese teams. He then introduces himself as Sungbyum, the head of international operations they will be working with from now on. Sungbyum then takes them to his office and presents them some donuts that are pretty trending in Okinawa nowadays. Sungbyum then asks them if they knew that there was a bit of competition to bring them here. He adds that because they helped Jangho, there was some rivalry between the heads and they all wanted to bring them to their teams. Changdeok then asks Jaiziop what's with the look on his face since earlier and if he don't like the donuts. Jaiziop says that the donuts that Sungbyum brought looked familiar, so he looked up and turned out the donut shop is exactly an hour-and-a-half drive from here. Jaiziop then reads Sungbyum's mind and realizes that his intentions are not that nice for them and he wants them to overwork. Afterward, Changdeok asks him if he checked the international team group chat, as it looks like their tasks have been assigned already. Changdeok tells him that he will be working under Kang Mingsu, helping foreign players adjust, and he will be assisting Yunjin with setting up practice matches. Later, they approached another guy and asked him about Yunjin and Cha-Cha. The guy says that out of all the people, they ended up working under Black Curtain Cha-Cha. He further explains that there was a drama based on baseball team's front office, and it was rumored that they made a great choice with the female lead. After the drama aired, the reporters went around the team conducting surveys, and none of the players knew who really Black Curtain Cha-Cha is. A few years ago, two players are arguing over the match, but then, Yunjin, who is actually Cha-Cha, arrives and takes one of them behind the black curtain. After that, the hot-tempered guy became so obedient. Just then, Jaiziop receives a call and the person tells him that Cha-Cha wants to have a meal with him before officially starting work. Later that day, Assistant Kim picks up Jaiziop and takes him to his meeting with Cha-Cha. On the way, he tells Jaiziop that they usually take their time with welcome gatherings for new members, but these days the team is busy going around to different places for food tours. He explains that starting next weekend, they will have continuous practice games, so they need to reserve restaurants for the players to visit while traveling. Assistant Kim then warns Jaiziop that it is best for him to stay alert while eating, because even after the meal, he will need to answer questions properly. He adds that if his answers are not what she expects right away, the meal will keep going, and their day could end up being delayed for a very long time. After some time, they finally arrive at the restaurant, and Jaiziop looks around and wonders where Cha-Cha is, the person who is most likely to become Korea's first female general manager. Jaiziop then meets her and thinks that she gives off the feeling of a friendly neighborhood auntie, but once the food arrives, she says that they should finish this restaurant review in one go. After some time, everyone finishes eating, and Cha-Cha asks them if they truly enjoyed the food. Assistant Kim says that the food is decent and that the kitchen is kept very clean. Another staff member adds that he checked with the workers about the ingredients and found out that most of them are locally sourced from Okinawa. After hearing this, Cha-Cha says that she plans to meet the restaurant owner later and asks what points she should bring up during that meeting. While listening to everyone, Jaiziop starts to realize that there is something specific she is not happy or satisfied with at all. Then another person at the meeting speaks up and points out that the break time is scheduled for 3 in the afternoon. But this only makes the situation more confusing, and Cha-Cha still does not look pleased or satisfied with that answer either. Cha-Cha then explains that she made a promise to her husband, who is at home taking care of all the kids, that she would become the operations head within 3 years. She says that if everyone keeps making mistakes and messing things up like this again and again, she does not know how she is supposed to leave the international team and move forward. After saying all of this, she stands up from her seat and says that they should have the dinner meeting again another time and properly talk everything through. Just before she leaves the room, Assistant Kim stops her and asks if they can hear the opinion of the new recruit who just joined them. He adds that the new recruit received very good feedback from the second team and, most importantly, that he has experience as a professional baseball player for a long time. Jaiziop then says that Cha-Cha thinks that they need to talk to the restaurant because the bowls are too small. Hearing that, Cha-Cha gets excited and says that their newbie is pretty sharp. Cha-Cha then explains that their players are big eaters and with bowls of this size, they will only hit the bottom after just 1 or 2 bites and there are over 30 players, so it's not going to be convenient if they keep asking for more rice. Moreover, she says that time is another issue because the teams coming here the week after, during the half of spring camp when their stamina will already be low and after practice games, they will be even more tired, so wasting 10 to 20 minutes to refill rice is unacceptable. After that, Cha-Cha tells Jaiziop to take coffee from Assistant Kim because he did a good job on his first day. Later, Assistant Kim and Jaiziop goes to a nearby cafe for some coffee and Kim insists that he should try some cakes as well. Assistant Kim then tells him that the dinner gathering is now skipped, so things feel a bit more relaxed. Jaiziop then asks him about practice game setup and if there is something specific they need to be mindful of. Kim replies that both Mr. Joe and Cha-Cha as they both seem to be stressing out over practice game. Later, Jaiziop and Assistant Kim head out and he asks Jaiziop if he know Amuro Sports Marketing, so Jaiziop says that they could call them a kind of broker. Jaiziop then asks him how many baseball teams he think are in Okinawa right now, so he replies that there are over 50 right now. So, with so many baseball teams gathered, it's hard for the team staff to handle all the communications themselves, so that's where companies like Amuro Sports Marketing step in to take care of various tasks in middle. After that, Assistant Kim tells him that it might sound funny coming from someone in baseball team BTU their KH group has that whole loyalty and camaraderie vibe. He further explains that the corporate atmosphere might have influenced the baseball team as well and other teams often change their spring training locations but KH has stuck with Okinawa as the spring training spot since the team was founded. Jaiziop then asks him why he seems so relaxed today, so Kim says that there is nothing much to do today as they will just meet with the people from Amuro, exchange some greetings, after confirming the practice game schedule they provide, they just need to sign the contract and come back. Suddenly, Assistant Kim gets shocked to see that there is a misunderstanding in the list as according to this, the teams designated as practice opponents for their KH cannons are all amateur clubs. Later that night, Jaiziop and Assistant Kim meet with Cha-Cha and Mr. Joe because they need to have an important discussion together. Mr. Joe asks Assistant Kim what he has done so far, and Assistant Kim explains that he requested more negotiations with Japan's professional teams, but their main concern was the poor performance of his team. Hearing this, Cha-Cha becomes frustrated and says that the Japanese teams are using their game results as an excuse, and she questions whether he truly believes them when they say they will not play practice matches because of that. She also points out that even when their team's performance was at its worst, Amuro still always asked for practice matches, which is why they continued working with them. Cha-Cha then asks Assistant Kim if he has any suspicions, but Kim says that he does not know anything because when he read the practice schedule, his mind completely went blank. Hearing this, Cha-Cha turns to Jaiziop and asks if he can speak Japanese, since Kim was busy dealing with Arakaki and Jaiziop might have had time to hear something. Jaiziop then says that he does have something to share, but he wants to tell only Mr. Joe and Cha-Cha. Because of this, they ask Kim to leave the room. Jaiziop then explains that he overheard some Japanese staff talking when he went to the restroom, and they were saying that the Cannons are leaving Okinawa after this season and will set up their spring camp in Arizona starting next season. From their reactions, it becomes clear that only the top executives knew about this plan, and Kim was completely unaware of it. Cha-Cha then wonders how this information leaked out, since they have not even informed the team manager about the Arizona plan yet. After that, Mr. Joe and Cha-Cha begin having a deep discussion about the Arizona plan, but then they suddenly realize that Jaiziop is still sitting in the room with them. Mr. Joe tells him to go back to his hotel room and get some rest for the night, but Jaiziop asks them if he can say just one more thing before he leaves. Jaiziop tells all of them that they might have disappointed and let down the people of Amuro, so he thinks and believes that they should start the conversation by saying something like they apologize and are sorry for this entire situation that has happened. Then, after they do that first, they can ask for cooperation, and it might be a much better approach and way to handle things. Mr. Joe then explains to Jaiziop that they are just looking and searching for a better environment for all the players to train and develop, and that is the main reason why they are moving to a different location, and it is the same exact situation for Amuro as well. However, Jaiziop says that KH and Amuro have worked together closely for almost 20 years now, so suddenly breaking all that trust and turning away from them would make them feel quite hurt and upset about everything. After that, Jaiziop explains that Amuro might be thinking the same way, since even their staff member Arakaki looked very disappointed earlier. The next day, Cha-Cha and Jaiziop visit the Amuro Sports Building, and Cha-Cha says that she is not sure whether showing regret will really change anything. Jaiziop and Cha-Cha then enter the building, where Jaiziop reads the thoughts of a man who clearly does not look happy to see them. Jaiziop asks Cha-Cha if she has thought about what she is going to say once they go inside, and she replies that she has already thought it through and that they will simply apologize. After that, they meet with Amuro's CEO and the division head, and Cha-Cha clearly tells them that the Cannons will be moving their spring training camp to Arizona in the United States starting next year. All of a sudden, Cha-Cha lowers her head and bangs it on the desk as she deeply apologizes, explaining that if she does not do this, then their sincerity will not truly be conveyed to them. The CEO and the division head quickly tell her to stop and say that they should calm down and talk things through properly instead of doing something so extreme. The CEO then says that making a direct visit like this just to apologize is almost something that never happens, but Cha-Cha responds by saying that this change in attitude is all thanks to Jaiziop, who helped change her way of thinking. She explains that even though he is a new recruit, he said something very meaningful, pointing out that after working together for nearly 20 years, they should see Amuro not just as a business partner, but as a friend. Hearing this, the CEO says that he is willing to reopen negotiations with the Japanese professional teams, although he also explains that they currently have very limited staff available to handle those discussions. The division head then says that they can arrange a meeting with the Japanese teams, and if Cha-Cha could join them and assist with the negotiations would be great. The CEO then explains that if she decides to join and participate, then it will be possible for them to secure even more practice matches than they had before. If she agrees to go along with this plan, they will take full responsibility and arrange a meeting with manager Kinju Katsuhiro for her. Hearing that, Cha-Cha seems really surprised, but the chief executive officer tells and explains to her that Kinju is the exact person who is in charge of running the Okinawa Training League starting from this season, and he is managing the Japanese professional baseball second-team All-Stars group. After that, Jaiziop gets back to his car so that he can catch up on all of his work while Cha-Cha stays behind and talks more with the Amuro chief executive officer about the details. Just then, Cha-Cha gets back to the car and tells Jaiziop that it is a bit of a hassle and inconvenience for her to go to the meeting, but securing and getting those practice matches makes it completely worth all the trouble. However, Jaiziop thinks to himself that the Amuro chief executive officer is clearly trying to keep them around and in Okinawa, because if the regular practice matches with the All-Stars are finalized and confirmed, they will undoubtedly be held in Okinawa instead of anywhere else. After the negotiations with Amuro Sports Marketing, the international operations team stays extremely busy. Following a very hectic schedule, they finally receive approval from both the manager and the general manager, and the spring camp practice match is officially confirmed. Today, their first practice game is against the Tokyo Gigantes, who are the champions of Japanese professional baseball from last season. Mr. Joe then informs everyone that once today's game ends, they will head straight to the venue for tomorrow's match. He also tells Jaiziop that he will be handling interpretation duties for the day, and since this is their first practice game of the season, the president of Amuro will be attending as well, which means Jaiziop will be responsible for interpreting for him throughout the day. After the meeting ends, Jaiziop asks Cha-Cha if he is really the right person for the job. She tells him that since he is quite fluent in both Japanese and English, he fits the role well. However, Jaiziop explains that he feels someone more senior should be in charge of interpreting between their general manager and the Amuro president. Cha-Cha replies that she cannot manage everything on her own, and although there are others who could handle interpreting, the issue is that they do not yet know about the plan to move the spring camp next year. Later, Jaiziop happens to run into the KH Cannons general manager, Seo Chanki. Chanki informs Jaiziop that the interpreter for today's game has already been decided, which shows that Mr. Joe's choice for this season has been finalized. Chanki also explains that Mr. Joe, who used to be a very successful scout when he was younger, still seems to have a sharp eye for judging people. He adds that many players were discovered under Mr. Joe's guidance, but the greatest talent among them all was Jonathan Stewart. He then explains to Jaiziop that if he pays close attention to everything, he will discover that there is a lot he can learn from him, and what he has right now in terms of skills might not be enough for the future. Hearing that, Jaiziop realizes that the general manager already knew from the beginning that the vice president is his backer and supporter, but as for making more achievements and accomplishments. The practice game then finally ends with a final score of 14-6, marking and showing a really heavy defeat for the home team, which is the KH Cannons. Jaiziop is already completely drained, and he did not think or expect that simply interpreting among all these VIP-level figures would drain and tire him out this much physically and mentally. Just then, Jaiziop receives a text message on his phone from the head, who calls and asks him to come to his office right away. Jaiziop then walks into his office to find out that the head wants him to work together with Changdiak on something. He realizes and figures out that there might be some kind of issue with the foreign player's adjustment to the team. After that, the head asks both of them if they know Jimmy Morris, who is a 32-year-old starting pitcher with 86 career wins in the majors and even an appearance in the All-Star game. He explains that the news of such a famous pitcher joining the KH Cannons has caused a big reaction on online forums, and even the training assistants outside turn out to be strong fans of Jimmy Morris. However, he adds that Jimmy is not feeling very well these days. Hearing this, Jaiziop thinks that saying "these days" sounds a bit misleading, because Jimmy has not really been in good condition ever since he joined the team. Chung Deok then asks Mr. Joe if there is a problem with Jimmy's health, and Mr. Joe replies that Jimmy suffered an elbow injury back in the United States, but he says that it is fine now. However, according to him, he hasn't been able to sleep since arriving in Okinawa, so Chung Deok says that insomnia isn't uncommon for pitchers as they have a lot on their minds, which can make them more sensitive. Mr. Joe explains that they gave him a private room all to himself, brought in a professional counselor to help him out, but it was all in vain and useless, and it is becoming a real headache for everyone now. Mr. Joe then says that only he and the general manager know about this sensitive information, but they have both agreed to replace Jimmy Morris before it becomes too late to fix. He explains and goes into detail that if Jimmy were physically injured in some way, at least they would know exactly how long his recovery would take to heal, but insomnia and sleep problems are completely different, and if the problem continues and keeps going on, the entire team will stay worried and concerned for the whole entire season. Mr. Joe then adds and continues by saying that finding a suitable replacement player right now at this moment is very difficult and challenging, so he wants both of them to work together and help Jimmy Morris recover and return to good condition and form as soon as possible. He also says that if they somehow manage to help Jimmy regain his form, he will personally make sure that both of them are promoted to full-time positions. Later that night, Jaiziop and Chung Deok cannot fall asleep because they keep thinking about the chance of becoming full-time staff. Chung Deok starts acting desperate and says that they should come up with some kind of strategy right away, but Jaiziop tells him that they should first try to get some sleep. The next day, Jaiziop and Chung Deok goes to Hotel NX where Jimmy Morris is staying. On their way, Chung Deok tells Jaiziop that Jimmy Morris is a bit difficult to deal with, and because he's from the major leagues, he seems to have a lot of pride. After that, they ring the bell of Jimmy Morris's room, and when he opens the door, both of them gets panicked. Chung Deok tells him that they are going to be his personal interpreters starting tomorrow. Jimmy tells them that if it's not for his condition he would love to invite them for a drink, but he is not feeling well these days and tries to close the door. Jaiziop steps his foot inside and asks him what is that he is so busy about. Jaiziop wonders that maybe he doesn't want to talk to the team because of his poor performance. Jaiziop then reads his thoughts and realizes that there is definitely something going on with Jimmy Morris. Jimmy then gets furious and pushed back Jaiziop, saying this is an invasion of privacy and that he is going to file a formal complaint to the front office tomorrow. After getting kicked out, Chung Deok asks Jaiziop why he blocked his way, so Jaiziop says that when he opened the door earlier he saw a glimpse of what's inside. Chung Deok still doesn't understand what he mean by that because he can't go inside someone's room who he just met today, and Americans are sensitive about those things. Jaiziop then asks him if he heard of Twin Power by any chance and explains that in Jimmy's computer screen, he saw Twin Power log something in it. Jaiziop thinks that it must be some kind of online game, as it wouldn't be surprising. Players ruining their condition because they are hooked on games isn't uncommon. Chung Deok then quickly googled about it and turns out it's not an online game but a streaming site. After that, they look up his channel online and Chung Deok think that he is a major player, but on his stream, he is acting like a so-called entertainer. Chung Deok then asks Jaiziop if he is going to report what Jimmy has been up to because he has been streaming every night from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. and then, he claims that he can't sleep. Jaiziop tells him to calm down because to secure the full-time position, they need to help Jimmy recover his condition. He also says that reporting the situation won't get them any official recognition, so they has to plan something. He then reveals that he was looking through Jimmy's channel earlier and found something. He tells Chung Deok to take a look at the broadcast title from January 28th. They both realizes that Jimmy was planning to quit streaming when he joined their team, but after this broadcast, he resumed streaming on February 8th. Jaiziop thinks to himself that if they dig into and investigate what happened during this time period, they might uncover and discover something useful and helpful for the situation. The next day after thinking about it, Jaiziop decides to eat lunch together with Jimmy, but due to his worse and declining condition, he does not eat anything at all on his plate. Jaiziop realizes and notices that he seemed to be awake during the warm-ups before training started, but by the time the practice game actually started and began, he starts falling asleep at different moments. Jaiziop realizes and understands that there is no one on the team who can say anything or give advice to a major league pitcher like him, and this explains and shows why he has not pitched in any of the games so far up until now. After that, they sit down and watch the match of another team playing on the field, and Jimmy says that this team's catchers have absolutely no sense of pitch calling or strategy. Jimmy thinks in his own private thoughts that if he had known it would be like this situation, he would not have let Edwin go away. Reading his thoughts, Jaiziop wonders who exactly Edwin is and what role he played. Later, Jaiziop tells Chung Deok about it, and Chung Deok explains that the man's name is Edwin Gonzalez, who is Jimmy's personal instructor. He says that Edwin joined KH together with Jimmy. but later went back to the United States, and while he was around, he did many things like catching balls for him and giving different kinds of advice. Because of that, Chung Deok felt that Edwin was not just a simple instructor. Chung Deok then reveals that Jimmy and Edwin were actually high school classmates, and when Jimmy was still a minor leaguer, Edwin only helped him train during the off-season. However, once Jimmy became a major leaguer, Edwin started handling almost everything for him. Jaiseop then wonders why a friend who stayed by Jimmy's side from high school until now would suddenly leave just as Jimmy joined an unfamiliar Korean team, so he thinks that Jimmy may have returned to broadcasting because he lost Edwin, the person he could always talk to. Jaiseop then asks Chung Deok why Jimmy sent that friend away, knowing he couldn't do without him. Chung Deok explains that Edwin received a really good offer in the United States, and if he builds and develops his career at a place like that, it makes complete sense that Jimmy would be in a tough spot right now. Chung Deok continues that now they know about the problem, the real issue and challenge is how to get Jimmy's condition back on track and working properly again. Jaiseop says that they might have a solution for that problem, and he explains and describes that the key and main point is that Jimmy has not been able to adapt and adjust to the new environment around him, and he ended up clinging and holding on to the internet for broadcasting because he was searching and looking for something familiar and comfortable. So, Jaiseop thinks that all they really need to do is assign a suitable friend who can help him adjust, but Chung Deok points out that he does not have any manners at all, he does not socialize with others on the team, and he treats players who cannot play baseball well like they are nothing. Later that day, Jaiseop and Chung Deok approach Jang Ho and tell him that he will be playing and taking on the role of a young player who is dreaming of making it to the major leagues. Jang Ho then asks them in a questioning way what he could possibly learn from a guy who has just 86 career wins in the majors and nothing more. Just then, Jimmy shows up to meet them, and when Chung Deok tries to introduce him to Jang Ho properly, Jang Ho says that he already knows who he is. Jimmy then explains that he thought about what kind of advice he, as a pitcher, could possibly give to Jang Ho, who is an outfielder, but then he came up with something good and helpful. He then gives and hands over a note to Jang Ho which has Nelson Schmidt's phone number written on it, and he thinks and believes that hearing advice from the best outfielder in the major league is much better and more valuable than hearing it from him directly. However, Jaiseop thinks to himself that the guy who has always been snarky and half-hearted about everything is suddenly acting like a devoted and passionate junior who is dreaming of making it to the major leagues, but at this rate and pace, the plan to make Jang Ho and Jimmy become friends might actually work out successfully. Jang Ho then asks and questions Jimmy about how he knows Schmidt personally because they were never on the same team together either, so how did he actually get this contact number from him? Jimmy replies and answers that it was 3 years ago in the past when he completely shut Nelson Schmidt down during a game and held him hitless in 4 at-bats without any success. So, Schmidt was so shocked and impressed by his pitching skills and performance that he actually reached out to him later on after the game, and then they had meals together and even trained with each other. After hearing all of that story, Jang Ho says and tells him that he is not going to believe that out of all the professional players in the league, Schmidt went hitless against him in 4 at-bats, and then he personally reached out to him on his own to connect. Jimmy and Jang Ho then started talking and discussing about baseball through Chung Deok's translation and interpretation help, and that conversation and discussion lasted for a whole 5 hours straight without stopping, and by the end of it all, it seemed like they could communicate and understand each other without the need for any translation at all. Since it is getting really late at night and the time has passed quickly, Jaiseop tells them to stop what they are doing right now and asks if they can all go grab some pizza together and continue the talk and discussion while eating. However, Jang Ho says and responds that the season is right around the corner, coming up very soon, and he does not want to load up and fill himself on something like pizza that is really unhealthy for athletes, and it is getting late in the evening already, so he has to go and leave because he has an important practice game scheduled for tomorrow too. After hearing all of that explanation from Jang Ho, Jimmy and Jang Ho just say goodbye to each other in a simple and casual way and walk away from each other in completely different directions to go home. Chung Deok is getting really frustrated because it is the first time in his entire life that he spoke and talked this much to convince people, and he thinks and believes that they should have just had a meal and drink right here instead of all this. Unexpectedly, they both received Jimmy's broadcast notice on their phones, and the post says and announces that Jimmy's Baseball Planet show will be on a break today due to personal reasons and issues, and the date for the next broadcast is undecided and not confirmed yet. After that day, Jimmy and Jang Ho's relationship have changed, but since Jang Ho doesn't know much English, he always asks Chung Deok and Jaiseop about it. Jang Ho tells Jaiseop and Chung Deok that the more he talks to Jimmy, the more he realizes that there's a lot to learn from him. The next day, everyone realizes that Jang Ho's condition has improved, and Jaiseop thinks that having a clear direction for his goal must be making it easier to stay motivated. However, the one who shows even greater improvement is Jimmy Morris. The coach asks Jimmy if he eats something good today because his slider is absolutely spot on. He started to feel more at ease, his pitching form improved and the compliments became more frequent, but a few days later, Jimmy tells Jiziop to tell the catcher that he is confident in his fastball, so why does he keep calling for breaking balls? The catcher tells Jiziop that he knows his fastball is good, but these days, hitters can handle pure speed. Hearing that, Jiziop tries to convince Jimmy that the catcher trusts his fastball too, but lately, Korean batters have gotten better at handling high velocity. Jimmy then decides to listen to them, and Jiziop notices that he finally starts paying attention to the catcher's advice, which is something he used to ignore before without a second thought. As the game goes on, Jimmy pitches strongly and manages to complete 4 full innings, giving up only 2 hits and just 1 run against the Tokyo Gigantes, who are known as one of the most prestigious and powerful teams in Japanese professional baseball. Because of this solid performance, the Cannons are able to secure their first victory in an exhibition game at last. Later that night, Jimmy calls Jiziop over to have a smoke together, but for a long moment, he does not say anything at all. After some silence, Jimmy finally speaks and says that he finds out Jiziop also knows about his streaming activities. He explains that the day before, he happens to see Changdeok's phone and notices that a streaming app is installed on it. Jimmy says that it is not an app that Koreans usually use, so he becomes curious and asks about it, and that is how he ends up learning everything and finally decides to talk about it. Jimmy then thanks him for everything, but Jiziop says that it was Changdeok who found out that the personal instructor he really needed had returned to the U.S. and it was Jang-ho who helped him a lot. However, Jimmy tells him and explains that Changdeok already told him earlier that it was Jiziop who planned everything from the start and decided to do something about the situation to help him. He then tells Jiziop directly that being a player himself in the past, he must understand and know that even if someone can do well and improve their skills, it is really hard for others to believe in them and have faith. After hearing that, Jiziop tells him and makes it clear that the person he really needs to earn trust from is not someone like him at all, but those people at the top of the organization, and if he does not earn the trust of the higher-ups in the organization soon, he will have to pack up his things and leave immediately without getting another chance. Jimmy reassures him that after today's game, he has a pretty good idea of how to handle Asian batters when he pitches, and as for the rest of everything else that needs to be done, he will prove and demonstrate that Jiziop's choice in believing in him was not wrong at all. However, things doesn't go as Jiziop planned, and both Cha-Cha and Mr. Joe thinks that Jimmy's condition has visibly improved, but they decided to replace him. Jiziop and Changdeok tells them that Jimmy had a hard time adjusting to the team because his personal instructor left. Cha-Cha thinks that it was her mistake because she thought Jimmy's instructor was a bullpen catcher. Mr. Joe tells Cha-Cha that they don't have such roles and even their friends based in the U.S. would have a hard time grasping such details. He further says that the local scouts they have asked for help already number well over 1,000. Hearing this, Jiziop feels that something is not quite right, because Cha-Cha is openly admitting that their own information gathering was lacking, yet Mr. Joe suddenly starts defending the US scouts for no clear reason. Mr. Joe then explains that they did not expect Jimmy's condition to improve so much in such a short amount of time, so just as he promised earlier, he will make sure to push for Jiziop and Changdeok to be promoted to permanent positions. Jiziop then asks Mr. Joe if their promotion to full-time roles means that Jimmy will continue playing for the team this season. However, Mr. Joe says that they have decided to replace Jimmy, which completely shocks both Changdeok and Jiziop. Mr. Joe explains that the performance goals they had in mind when they signed Jimmy are far beyond what he can reach in his current condition, and they cannot wait forever for him to improve. To their surprise, he reveals that Jimmy has been lying to them, which shocks Jiziop and Changdeok. He further says that Jimmy has been streaming online almost every night, and they say that streaming is not an issue, but staying up all night for it and then lying about it by claiming he had insomnia is the issue. After that, Mr. Joe tells them that the list of replacement foreign players is already finalized and they will arrive in Okinawa for testing as early as tomorrow or day after that. After the meeting, Changdeok is completely freaking out about the situation, but Jiziop tells him that Jimmy was the one who lied to everyone and stayed up late streaming on the internet, so it is his own fault for getting into this mess. Jiziop then asks him if things are moving really quickly, like the list of foreign players to replace Jimmy has already been narrowed down to specific candidates. Right after that, Jiziop and Changdeok decide to do something together for the last time to help. Following that decision, Jiziop and Changdeok confess to Cha-Cha that they knew what Jimmy was doing all along during this entire time, but Cha-Cha got really furious at both of them for keeping it secret. After a while, Cha-Cha calms down and tells them to keep this information between just them for now, but from now on, they should report everything that happens without hiding anything. Changdeok and Jiziop then explain that it is better not to replace him as a player because his attitude and everything about his behavior has improved a lot recently, so she says that she will bring it up to Mr. Joe at the right time. After that, Changdeok explains that in the mid to late 2000 time period, the Cannons were stuck in a really bad slump and they were like a team with powerful offense but weak pitching plays that let them down. Even in those difficulties, one player consistently did his part and earned the special title of ace on the team, and that player was Jonathan Stewart. Chung Deok also mentions that people like him just called Jonathan by the nickname K-Bone because Jonathan once said in an interview that he would put his bone and soul in KH and give everything, but fans from other teams he crushed and defeated didn't like that statement at all. Chung Deok then asks Jaiseop in a questioning way that what if Mr. Joe was actually the one who signed and brought Jonathan to the team back then. Chung Deok says and explains further that Jonathan is currently working as a scout in the United States right now, and if it is Jonathan who is helping them, then it makes complete sense that he found a replacement player this fast and quickly. He explains and goes into detail that back when he was a player on the team, he used to say repeatedly that he would bury his bones in KH and dedicate his entire career there, and since he brought in Jimmy to the team, he probably wanted to fix and solve the problem he caused for the Cannons organization. The next day, Jonathan arrives and lands in Okinawa. Mr. Joe then speaks directly to Jaiseop and tells him that he will be going together with him to meet and evaluate the foreign players that Jonathan personally scouted and brought in for the team. As they talk, Mr. Joe asks Jaiseop whether they should continue trusting Jimmy and keep him on the roster, or if this is the right moment to bring in a new player to replace him instead. While listening, Jaiseop thinks to himself that the team is most likely going to choose the new player Jonathan brought over, especially because of Jimmy's lie and mistake from a few days earlier. After that discussion ends, they meet with other coaches and staff members, who whisper among themselves. They talk about how Jimmy was never Jonathan's favorite player to begin with and that this is the main reason Jonathan is now pushing so hard to bring in new players to take Jimmy's place. Jaiseop thinks that for the staff to speak so openly like this, it is clear that this level of trust does not form overnight, and from his days as a player to his life after retirement, Mr. Joe has been working as the team's overseas scout for more than 20 years. Just then, Jonathan arrives along with several players, and it turns out there are quite a lot of them. Jonathan apologizes to Mr. Joe about Jimmy, but Mr. Joe tells him that he is the one who made the mistake, so Jonathan does not need to apologize. Jonathan then introduces David, Chris, and Lloyd's agent, explaining that Mr. Joe can ask them anything he wants about the players. Mr. Joe is surprised to see that Jonathan even brings the players' agents with him. After that, Mr. Joe hands some documents about those players to Jaiseop and tells him to keep them safe. After that, training for the new players begins, and Jonathan tells Mr. Joe that their overall level is about 80% of Jimmy's. However, since the opening season is very close, he believes this is the best option Cannons can get at the moment. Once the training session ends, the team treats the foreign players and their agents to dinner, and after that, the time finally comes to decide what will happen to Jimmy. During the meeting, Kim Won-soo speaks up and says that just like Jonathan mentioned earlier, the new players are not completely reliable as main starting pitchers, but their pitch quality and control are still decent enough for them to serve as third or fourth starters. However, the operation team's Park Suk-won says that they also seem to know quite a bit about Korean culture, and now, they have to just pick one of the three and they don't have to stick with Jimmy anymore. Mr. Joe then asks everyone if they got any thoughts on today's showcase, but no one speaks anything because the question feels heavy for them. Jaiseop wonders that a decision might have already been made by the higher-ups, or maybe it's unshakable trust in Jonathan. Jaiseop then quickly says that he wants to ask one thing, so Mr. Joe tells him to ask plenty of questions he wants. Jaiseop explains that he has similar opinions to the managers about the players because they are all good players with real potential to improve and develop, but it seems like all the players who took the test today are from the same company somehow. However, Mr. Joe questions how they came with their own agents separately, so how does it make it the same company at all? Jaiseop tells them and clarifies that the ones who took the test today have different agents representing them, but they all have the same coordinator working behind them, and when the others checked and verified it, they are surprised and shocked to see that they all belong to the same coordinator. They ask Jaiseop in a confused way how he knows about this connection, so he explains that one specific name keeps appearing again and again in everything that happened so far, and he becomes fully sure about it during dinner time. At the same moment, Jaiseop is caught off guard when he sees that all three players choose the japchae dish even though Korean food is available everywhere around them. Jaiseop then asks if they are suddenly craving japchae, and all three of them give answers that sound stiff and unnatural, like they already prepared those replies beforehand. He then tells them that in the United States, there are very few places that actually sell japchae, so he asks where they even tried it before. Hearing this, all of them start panicking inside, but they quickly say that they tried it in Koreatown instead. However, Jaiseop can read their reactions and thoughts and slowly realizes that all three of them are connected to New Frontier Sports. After that, the tension in the air grows even heavier. The manager then thinks that asking Jaiseop about it is not important, but they need to talk to Jonathan and confirm it with him. After some time passes, Jonathan walks into the room, and Mr. Joe immediately shows him a video that leaves Jonathan completely shocked and speechless. Mr. Joe explains that a new team member pointed out something they could not simply ignore, so he checked a certain website that listed the players who came for today's test. Hearing this, Jonathan apologizes to Mr. Joe and admits that everything he said is true, explaining that all of those players are connected to the same coordinator company. Jaiziop thinks to himself that Jonathan has been with the Cannons for 20 years, so he must have known and expected this kind of pressure to come eventually. Jonathan then says that he is ready to accept whatever consequences may follow, but another manager asks him why he chose to bring in players from that specific company in the first place. Jonathan explains that the timing was extremely tight because the season was about to begin, and he was afraid that if anything went wrong, the Cannons might be forced to start the season without a foreign pitcher. Because of that fear, he reached out to a coordinator company he already had connections with and asked them to recommend suitable players. Hearing that, another manager says that there wasn't really any other option if they wanted to bring in a foreign player quickly and that he had his own reasons too. Jaiziop thinks that if it were someone else, this would definitely be a problem, but the person involved is Jonathan Stewart. Mr. Joe then says that it's not worth making a big deal out of it because when we think about it, Jonathan did it for the team. However, Jaiziop thinks that bringing in players from just one specific company is an issue, but if it's for quickly securing players, it is not exactly something that can't be done. Jaiziop then reads Jonathan's thoughts where he feels relieved that he managed to handle it before things went downhill and how the story about Edwin didn't come up. Reading those thoughts, Jaiziop gets surprised and wonders that Edwin got scouted by an American company and left Jimmy, and then Jimmy has been struggling with his situation and is now on verge of being released from the team. Jaiziop then asks Jonathan if hearing the name New Frontier Sports reminds him of something, and he explains that Jimmy, who is currently being considered as a replacement player, once mentioned that he used to have a personal instructor. Jaiziop adds that this instructor later received an offer from a company in the United States to work as a mental coach, and that instructor's name was Edwin. When Jonathan hears this, he becomes completely stunned, but Jaiziop continues by saying that the company that offered Edwin the replacement position was New Frontier Sports. Jaiziop points out that it feels strange how, after New Frontier Sports brought Edwin in, Jimmy's performance started to shake, and now all of the foreign players arriving as replacements are also from New Frontier Sports. Jaiziop believes that it looks like New Frontier Sports may have intentionally taken Edwin in order to mess with Jimmy on purpose. Hearing this, Jonathan becomes furious, but Jaiziop tells another staff member to call Edwin right away, explaining that if they simply ask him who made the job offer, everything can be cleared up easily. 10 years ago, Mr. Joe told Jonathan that the new manager has made the final decision that the team will bring in a new foreign pitcher next year. Jonathan responds by saying that he has been carrying the team as the ace for the past several years, but even after all that effort, they still never managed to reach the postseason even once. Mr. Joe then asks if Jonathan has talked with his agent about what he plans to do next in his career. Jonathan replies that they talk about it a little, and he admits that at his current age, going back down to the minor leagues would not be easy at all. He then says that he is thinking about retiring from playing and returning to the United States to try working as a scout instead. Mr. Joe suggests that Jonathan could use his long experience to scout talented Korean players, but Jonathan answers that he actually wants to focus on scouting American players instead. He says and explains that he wants to find players in the United States who have not been able to make it big or get their chance to shine and send them over to the Cannons to play. Back in the present time, Jonathan yells loudly at Jaiziop that he was once the ace pitcher of the Cannons team, so how does he think and believe that he was scheming behind the scenes to mess with Jimmy and ruin him? Mr. Joe then tells Jonathan directly that he will not say Jaiziop is wrong about his suspicions, and he says that if he is truly innocent and has nothing to hide, one simple phone call should clear everything up and prove it. However, Jonathan asks him in a frustrating way if he is going to break and destroy all the trust of them working together closely for so many years just like that. 10 days later, after all the investigation, it turns out that Jaiziop's instincts pointed to a simple case of what is called player shaking in the industry. The idea and theory that Jonathan had deliberately unsettled Jimmy on purpose to push him out of the team and replace him with one of his own recruits was actually a one-time scheme and plan all along. However, when KH's headquarters launched an investigation, they uncovered something far worse. Chung Deok then tells Jaiziop that Jonathan made a deal with his coordinator company about 5 years ago. That in exchange for getting New Frontiers players into the Cannons, he would receive a commission. Chung Deok says that if Jaiziop had not figured out that New Frontier Sports was involved, then KH would have continued bringing in suspicious foreign players without anyone realizing it. He then asks Jaiziop how he was able to uncover this, since most people would not even recognize the company's name at all. Jaiziop replies that he simply talked with the players Jonathan brought in and learned everything directly from them. After that, Jaiziop asks what is going to happen to Jonathan, but Chung Deok explains that it will take some time before the official investigation results come out, and once trust is broken, things naturally begin to collapse. Chung Deok also adds that Jimmy is going to stay with the team, and that Mr. Joe returns to Korea today. In Korea, Mr. Jo hands his resignation letter to Sakhaline, who looks shocked and asks why he would do this when he used to be one of KH's top scouts in the past, and now he cannot even properly manage or keep track of a single foreign player. Mr. Jo apologizes and explains that he truly believed he had a good eye for judging people, but now he realizes that was not completely true. He says that when he worked as a scout before, he always checked and double-checked everything, making sure he never lost his focus for even a moment. Mr. Jo then admits that over time, he started assuming his first judgment would always be correct, and because of that, he ended up overlooking and neglecting important details. After this, Mr. Jo brings up Jaiziop's name and says that Jaiziop played a very important role in uncovering the truth behind the situation. He adds that even though he has been scouting for many years, he has never seen anyone who can read and understand people as accurately as Jaiziop can. Mr. Jo then tells Sakhaline that he feels a little embarrassed to even bring this up, but he sincerely hopes that Jaiziop can continue working at the cannons without facing any problems or difficulties. 1 week later, the KH Cannon spring camp held in Okinawa, Japan officially comes to an end. After that, the team returns home through Incheon International Airport, and while the players enter a short 3-day break, rest is not something the front office can afford. Soon after, the department heads gather for a meeting, where one person announces that Mr. Jo, who is in charge of the international operations team, is leaving Cannons due to personal reasons. So, he says and announces that the position for the head of the international operations team for this season will be given to Cha-Cha as the new leader. All the other people in the room think and understand that her direct superior got caught up in an unfortunate situation and scandal, so it is kind of awkward and uncomfortable to openly congratulate her on the promotion right now. Now, the guy further says and continues explaining that the first thing they need to decide and figure out today in this meeting is the assignment of training assistants to different departments and positions. He explains clearly that the two highest-rated assistants based on their performance and work are Jaiziop from the International Operations Department and Changdeok from his team, who both did excellent work. Moreover, he says and adds more information that Changdeok has received a really strong recruitment request from the performance analysis team, who wants him badly, and he is the only training assistant who can handle and operate the measurement equipment properly and efficiently without any problems. After that, the head starts to talk about Jaiziop and his situation, but the atmosphere in the meeting room suddenly gets pretty tense and uncomfortable for everyone there. Meanwhile, Jaiziop and Changdeok are helping Jimmy move all his belongings into his new apartment and get settled in. After they finish everything, Jimmy asks them if they are going to get hired by KH permanently now that their internship period is finally over and done. Earlier, someone informed Sakhaline that none of the department teams are willing to take Jaiziop in. An assistant explains that everyone keeps thinking Jaiziop is the reason Mr. Jo was pushed out, so the team heads feel uncomfortable around him. The man then says that if no one wants to accept Jaiziop, he can just let him work under his team instead, but Sakhaline thinks further and considers making Jaiziop the assistant to the general manager. Sakhaline then explains that if they suddenly give such a big title to someone who is only seen as a training assistant, the front office will feel even more upset and resentful toward them. After hearing this, the man starts wondering what kind of relationship Sakhaline has with Jaiziop, because it clearly looks like he cares a lot about him. Back in the present, Jaiziop receives a phone call from the office and is informed that he is being assigned as Coach Arthur Freeman's interpreter. Arthur Freeman is a 64-year-old man from the United States, and in November, he is officially appointed as the new manager of the KH Cannons. He began his career as the manager of the La Dice Rookie League team and spent the next 30 years coaching in the minor leagues, developing future major league players. The next day, Jaiziop goes to meet with Arthur, who then asks him if he ever heard of the term butterfly effect. Jaiziop wonders that he is jumping straight in without an introduction, but Jaiziop tells him that the flap of a butterfly in Brazil could lead to a tornado in the far-off US. Arthur says that he is correct, and as he was sitting here this morning, just thinking, he realized that maybe he is being his translator, could be an example of that butterfly effect. He then explains that Mr. Jang, who has been sitting over there at the table, has been his personal translator up until now and this whole time, and with Mr. Jo being dismissed from his position and Cha-Cha taking over the leadership, Mr. Jang of the International Operations team was promoted to frontline manager position, and he is replacing him in his translation position now. Arthur further says about how the one that flies high and full of confidence in the sky, not worrying about what others think or say about them, so can he be that butterfly who is strong and unshaken by anything around. Just then, Mr. Jang tells Jaiziop directly that he is right and it is not his fault in anything that happened. However, thanks to him and his hard work, they will be able to bring in even better foreign players in the future seasons. After that conversation finishes, Arthur tells Jaiziop to take his time slowly and learn the translation work carefully from Mr. Jang over the coming days. Jaiziop then gets to his new office space and wonders to himself that Arthur was probably planning to leave him hanging like a sack of barley without any guidance. Jaiziop then notices a really good coffee machine in the corner and thinks to himself that Arthur really likes coffee a lot. Mr. Jang tells him that Arthur is a great person overall, but when it comes to coffee and his preferences, he is really picky and particular about it. 10 days later, Mr. Jang walks up to Arthur and says that he only wanted to ask about Jaiziop for a moment. He explains that the handover process is already finished, so he asks when Arthur plans to have Jaiziop start working right by his side. Arthur responds by asking if Mr. Jang really wants to leave his side that badly, but Mr. Jang explains that with the season opener getting closer, the workload of the international operations team is increasing a lot. He also explains that since he is covering the frontline manager's duties at the same time, he thinks it would be better to pass the interpreting work over to Jaiziop. However, Arthur thinks to himself that he still has not found anyone who can replace Mr. Jang yet, and it is not easy to find someone who understands baseball well and can communicate with him properly at the same time. He then tells Mr. Jang that he has been making his coffee far too well lately, so it is not easy to find someone who understands him so perfectly just from the way they prepare his coffee, and because of that reason, he cannot let him go so easily. Mr. Jang then reveals that Jaiziop has been making his coffee since the day he officially started, so it's been almost 10 days now. After that, Mr. Jang and Arthur goes back to the office where Arthur asks Jaiziop what his secret is for making coffee that good. Jaiziop replies that it's simple as he just know how to make the coffee exactly how he like it, and he has too made it look cool as well. He then asks Arthur why he find that so surprising because it is normal for a front office staff to pick up on how he is feeling. He then says that especially since he work in his office, it's not hard to keep an eye on him and adjust the coffee accordingly. Hearing that, Arthur asks him if he is paying close attention to him, then what do he think has been on his mind the most lately. Jaiziop says that it's a fact that their Cannons players are way too nice. He explains that if remember then he has emphasized rookie development since the moment he took over, and he has made it clear multiple times that he is willing to give opportunities to young players with potential, even if they are not quite at the top level yet. Moreover, Jaiziop explains that usually young players would be rushing to stand out and prove themselves, but so far, no one has really done that, and what worries him even more is that not a single veteran shows a strong reaction to what he says either. Arthur then tells Jaiziop to be clearer and more specific, so Jaiziop explains that if the mid-level veterans openly pushed back against him, he could shut them down and clearly show his authority. At the same time, this would send a strong and clear message to the rookies as well, but right now, both the veterans and the rookies are just sitting quietly and waiting to see how everything turns out. Hearing this, Arthur starts laughing and says that he suddenly wants some coffee, so Jaiziop quickly begins making one for him. After that, Arthur tells Mr. Jang that he should leave tomorrow, because for this season, Jaiziop is going to be in charge of interpreting for him. 3 days later, Jaiziop sits in a meeting room together with Arthur and the others, and with the exhibition games almost finished, the Cannons are standing at 6 wins and 2 losses, which is good enough to place them second in the league. During the meeting, the first team hitting coach, Soo-hyung, says that he feels truly proud of how the rookies are stepping up and handling the pressure so well. He explains that left fielder Junwoo and third baseman Juno are both very solid and reliable players, but he believes the real standout among them is shortstop Shin Min-seong. Soo-hyung goes on to explain that even though Min-seong's batting average is not very impressive yet, his power at the plate makes him a very dangerous and valuable player for the team. He also mentions that Min-seong is from Yongsan, and hearing that makes Jaiziop realize that Sakhalin and chairman Ju Tae-san are also alumni of the same school, which clearly means that Min-seong is a true, pure-blooded Cannon. Coach Soo-hyung then tells Arthur that the season opener is just around the corner and the media has been all over him for interviews lately, so they should give Min-seong a little shout out in one of them. At first Arthur jokes and asks if he is saying that because he is Yongsan's alumni, but the coach quickly tells him that it's not the case. Arthur says that if that's what the coaches think, then a little praise isn't a big deal and he will consider it. However, Jaiziop then notices a bitter smile on Arthur's face and figure out that he is probably thinking something like how dare they make a request like this. Later, Arthur tells Jaiziop that he completely agrees with the coaching staff, and if they are appealing to people from this region, then they should prioritize players from here, and that way, the fans will develop a special attachment to them. Arthur further says that from his perspective, Min-seong climbed up to a starting spot way too easily. He explains that the veterans should fight tooth and nail to hold on to their spots, and the young guys should be clawing their way up with everything they have got. However, this time while playing at shortstop, the change feels way too calm and polite, but Jaiziop does not really understand what that means or why it feels so strange to him. He explains that when he first joins the team, it does not take long before Mr. An, who is last season's starting shortstop, comes to see him in person. Mr. An explains that he wants to move to second base next year because he is getting older, and playing shortstop is becoming too hard and tiring for him. Later that night, Jaiziop goes to a restaurant to get something to eat, but the chef asks if he is a staff member from the baseball team and says that he must be working very hard. Jaiziop answers that the season has not even started yet, but he already feels worn out, and it is not only physical tiredness, because carrying and sharing the manager's worries feels much harder than he expects. After that, Jaiziop's food arrives, and as he looks around the table for chopsticks, An Yongchan suddenly shows up out of nowhere. After that, Jaiziop and An Yongchan eat together, and Jaiziop wonders that An was once considered the region's top pick, but he spent years bouncing between teams without realizing his full potential. 3 years ago, he finally landed a spot with the Cannons, and the year before last, he even secured a small-scale FA contract. Moreover, he only held the starting position for 3 years, and he must be desperate to stay on the field for as long as possible, yet he went to the coach himself and offered to step down as the starting shortstop. Jaiziop then asks An if it would be possible for him to take his autograph because his brother back home is a fan of his. He then says that he has liked him since his days with the Gyosan Mariners, and he even said he once shook hands with him at a game. An then quickly grabs the ball and signs it, and just as he signs it, Jaiziop says that his brother is frustrated lately because the exhibition games are in full swing, but he hardly gets to see An play. Jaiziop says that his brother even said that he doesn't understand why Mr. An is giving up his starting spot when his skills haven't declined yet. Then An asks him if his brother is the one who wonders, or is it him. He then asks if he haven't told anyone beside the coach that he gave up his starting spot, but Jaiziop says that his insight is remarkable. Jaiziop then says that before leaving work today, he checked on stats, and those were 270 batting average, 8 home runs and 54 RBIs. He says that it's not quite on par with his 20 home run, 20 stolen base season 2 years ago, but his batting is still solid and his defensive skills as a shortstop are among the best on the team. Jaiziop then asks him if there is a particular reason he told the coach that, but An says that the biggest reason is Min Seong's potential. An says that Min Seong reminded him exactly of his younger self: strong hitter, solid defense, great instincts. He explains that a top prospect from a prestigious local high school, hailed as a rising star and signed by his hometown team with a good contract just like him. At that moment, a sudden thought crosses his mind, and he realizes that if there is any way to avoid it, he does not want Min Seong to go through the same tough and painful career path that he himself goes through. Jaiziop then brings up whether he tells the coach that he is willing to give up his starting position, but he also questions if fully guaranteeing Min Seong a starting spot is truly the best thing for Min Seong right now. An responds by explaining that it is not really about simply handing Min Seong the starting role, but more about removing every other possible shortstop option for the KH Cannons so the team has no confusion or backup choices. In the end, An explains that the Cannons are a team he feels very thankful toward, because they take a risk on him when his career is falling apart and trust him with the starting shortstop position. He believes that he makes the right choice for the team by giving them a sharp, reliable, and true shortstop they can depend on, but at the same time, Min Seong now seems to be struggling and having a hard time moving forward. The next day, the KH Cannons vs Future Kings match, and during the match, the other team's batter hits the ball that gets to the left field. Min Seong gets confused and tries to catch the ball even though it was not his catch. Min Seong then missed the catch, and up to this point, it could be called a mistake, but as the game went on, Min Seong only made things worse as he kept throwing the ball all over the place. After that disastrous throw, Min Seong started making reckless plays that anyone could see were unnecessary. Min Seong kept forcing plays that led to errors, and as this pattern continued all the way up to the point when the Cannons had to finalize their opening day roster, the coaching staff's perspective on him had clearly changed. Later at meeting, everyone tells Arthur that they need to reconsider starting Min Seong as their shortstop as his condition isn't bad, but he's way too anxious. They think that they have got him to the second team for a while to let him reset, but if they demote him now, with his mentality already shaken, it could slow down his recovery even more. Arthur says that they still have time before the final roster is set, so they should keep an eye on him a little longer. However, Jaiziop wonders that the coaching staff was all saying they should promote Min Seong to the public, but now, that's going to be tough. He thinks that there are generally two approaches to developing rookies. The one is to create fierce competition by stacking a single position and seeing who survives. The other option is to handpick a standout talent carefully and nurture them from the very start of their career. After the meeting ends, Arthur asks Jaiziop directly how they should handle and manage the shortstop position this season, but Jaiziop thinks to himself that it is playing out just as An said it would, and he asks him to push for Min Seong's spot on the roster, even if problems and issues arose from it. Later that night, Jaiziop runs into An in the corridor by chance, and An asks him in a curious way if the result for the opening roster has come out yet. Jaiziop says that the result is out and Min Seong has made it onto the opening day roster successfully, so for now he will mainly be used as a pinch hitter. An then gets really excited and asks if Arthur took his advice about the situation, but Jaiziop reveals that he actually recommended taking Min Seong off the roster completely instead. He explains that he believes An should be the shortstop on the team, and he asks An directly if he really has no desire to play baseball actively anymore. Few hours earlier, Jaiziop told Arthur directly that he should send a clear message to An about his situation, because if he thinks about the future of the team and what is best. He knows deep down that he should take a step back from playing, but he still has the desire and passion to keep playing as an active player on the field. Arthur thinks to himself that it is not strange or unusual for a player who is nearing retirement to feel that way at all, so the message that he will send him is to give it his all and play his absolute best until the very end of his career. Arthur then tells Jaiziop directly to deliver the message himself personally because he has already told a lot of coaches to talk with on about this, but none of them have ever come back to him with the kind of insight and understanding that he just shared right now. The next day after that conversation, an inter-squad game was held and organized for the KH Cannons players to compete, and for those players who had made the opening day roster already, it was their final chance to check their condition and form, while for those who had not made it, it was an opportunity to appeal and prove themselves to the head coach. The starting pitcher for the blue team is Jimmy, and as for the blue team's shortstop, it's actually On. He then does a bunt in his very first at-bat and safely gets to the second home base. After that, On shows incredible performance with a second hit and everyone starts cheering for him. The match continues with the batter hitting a long shot and Jaiziop realizes that this is a situation similar to the one Minseong couldn't handle back then, so he wonders how On dealt with it will. The ball then goes towards the center fielder, so On quickly shouts at him to catch it. The center fielder then slides on the ground quickly and manages to catch the ball successfully before it drops. On then tries to help him up and check on him, but the center fielder says and complains that the left fielder should have caught that ball instead, but On starts scolding him for saying that. Seeing that, Jaiziop thinks to himself that even though he is speaking directly to the center fielder right now, the one person that On really wants to reach with these words and lessons is actually Minseong instead. Later that night after practice, Changdeok feels relieved that On listened to Jaiziop's advice and guidance, but he realizes and notices that Jaiziop does not seem so happy about it at all. Jaiziop explains that he was hoping that On would talk to Minseong directly about today's play and what happened, because in situations like this and similar ones, it is much more effective when the senior player who made the play directly speaks up and gives feedback himself. Jaiziop receives a phone call from Sakhalin, so he goes to meet him at a restaurant where Sakhalin is enjoying some sashimi all alone by himself. Jaiziop wonders to himself that he does not act like this around anyone else at all, so why does he always end up whining like a kid in front of this old man whenever they meet? Sakhalin then says and tells him that it looks like he has been doing well lately, surviving all that trouble and drama and even landing the interpreter job for Coach Arthur successfully. Jaiziop says and explains that lately he has been realizing just how inexperienced he really is in this field, because he might know a thing or two about playing baseball as a player, but when it comes to how a baseball team actually runs and operates behind the scenes, he is still totally clueless and has no idea. Sakhalin then starts drinking heavily, says that there is one thing he wanted to ask about, and that is about the Cannon season opener game happening the day after tomorrow. He says that it came up during the executive meeting at HQ today and they were asking what he thought about showing up at Cannon's field that day. Moreover, he says that when the team owner shows up at the stadium, it's newsworthy in itself and the fans usually take it as a good sign. He then says that this is the reason he called him, as everyone else on the team's just too busy trying to read his mood to give him a straight answer. Jaiziop then starts staring at Sakhalin's face, which makes him furious, and he says that he got the habit of sneaking glances at people always checking their mood. Sakhalin then says that what he need right now is confidence and boldness does not experience. He then tells him directly not to hesitate from now on, and even if something feels off or wrong, he should say it out loud, and even if something feels right as well, he should speak up. After that, Sakhalin decides to ask him once again what he thinks he should do for the upcoming season opener game. 2 days after that discussion, on the day of the Cannon season opener game, Jaiziop receives a text message on his phone that Sakhalin arrived at the stadium with the gifts for the second-string players on the team. Earlier, Jaiziop told Sakhalin to go to the second-string players' field instead because the morale of the first-string players is already high and good right now. Back in the present, Jaiziop gets to know and finds out that Sakhalin is going to watch the game with the second-string players at their training ground location, but he wonders why he does not just throw them gifts and leave right away. Jaiziop then receives another message from Sakhalin on his phone that says he has got great instincts and good judgment, so he should keep trusting his gut feeling and working hard at what he does. After that, the match begins with Jimmy striking out the batter, and everyone thinks that Jimmy's condition is through the roof today. Jimmy, who used to be a real headache for everyone, has reinvented himself as a true team player and led them to a win on opening day. However, another troublemaker who gave everyone fits, Jang Ho, looked like he was never in a slump to begins putting up a monster performance in the second game. The competitor says that the Cannons are off to a great start this season and they are not going on huge winning streaks, but they are not losing back-to-back either. After taking the first 2 games in a 3-game series against Geo-san Mannerless, the fans really started to buzz. Jimmy lived up to the fans' expectations, but closer Kim Jeongyu didn't. Later that night, Jaiziop reads some harsh comments online, but then Changdeok shows up and says that his meeting ended sooner than expected. Jiziop tells him that all they got was listening to Coach Jinchul yelling his head off. Changdeok then tells him that Jeonggyu's working on his slider right now and he said he should be able to shelve that wild forkball soon, so he's asking for a little more time. Changdeok then asks him what his take on Kim Jeonggu and is switching to a slider really the right call at this point. Jiziop replies that it's not a smart move but they are going by the book and forkballs are hard to control and honestly, they are not the best pitch for a closer. Changdeok tells him that he thinks a slider is not a bad idea at all, but the real problem and issue is that Jeonggyu's slider is just way too flat and does not have enough movement. He further adds that they have been trying to get him to master it for like 2 or 3 years now, and Coach Jinchul was not even the first one to try that approach with him before. After explaining all of that, Changdeok says that they need to break out of the mindset and belief that forkballs have to bounce in the dirt every single time. After hearing that statement, Jiziop asks him where he should throw it instead, so Changdeok replies and says that he should throw it to the middle of the strike zone. Because if Jeonggu can throw a forkball straight down the middle successfully, they believe he can seriously level up his pitching skills. Changdeok then explains further that even if forkballs do not usually travel as far as other pitches, if he just floats one right down the middle of the plate, it is basically batting practice for hitters who will hit it easily. How long do you think it will take for Jiziop to become a true top-tier asset for Cannons? Comment fastball if you'd like part 2 of this series. Make sure to like and subscribe the channel for more sports manhwa recaps.